History begins when we observe a historical moment. Who would have thought that man could display such power? A crazy athlete from the very depths of hell, Yuhan Seol, made up of a mountain of muscle, is about to turn the history of the WPC and all of powerlifting upside down. He is the first man to ever lift a barbell weighing 10 tons. At the age of 17, he has managed to do just that. He intends to become the strongest being in the world, whose strength surpasses human capabilities. Suddenly, something strange happens to the athlete. Yuhan Seol drops the barbell, catches his heart, and falls to the ground. Shocked spectators are concerned about the athlete's condition. The voices of medics can be heard from the crowd shouting for help. At that moment, the athlete's eyes darkened and the blue sky became visible. He immediately remembered the doctor's words, urging him to be careful. Yuhan Seol thought to himself, would this have happened to him if he had a little more muscle? Although, they say women don't like too much muscle. The thoughts never left the athlete's head. Style or muscle? One of the three most difficult questions in the universe. Yuhan Seol remembers that he needs to take his protein now, not lying on the floor unconscious. The athlete doesn't realize who is whispering in his ear. The athlete doesn't realize who is whispering in his ear, and he can't realize who is whispering in his ear. In his sleepy delirium, the athlete hears the clucking of chickens. Finally, he opens his eyes and sees dozens of screaming hens in front of him. Yuhan Seol is lying on the lawn for some reason, and he's not wearing any gym clothes. But Yuhan Seol used to lift weights, so how did he end up here? Yuhan Seol sees a vast field and huge chickens in front of him. The athlete is completely bewildered, trying to piece together the events and understand how he came to be here. In utter despair, Yuhan Seol comes to the conclusion that he ate too much chicken and went to hell full of rooster resentment. That must be why there are such huge chickens. The chickens are attacking Yuhan Seol. An angry athlete punches one of the chickens with his fist. Yuhan Seol is furious that there are no squirrels around, and then there are these chickens. But suddenly, the athlete gets an idea. What if these chickens have protein in them? If that's the case, then Yuhan Seol gratefully accepts these gifts and pounces on the chickens with burning eyes. After eating the chicken, Yuhan Seol sat down by a tree to rest. Suddenly, he noticed his hands. Had they always been so thin? And my chest seems to have shrunk. Even Yuhan Seol can scratch his back now. The athlete can't believe what's happening, because labor can never betray. The results of his labors could not disappear. In utter despair, Yuhan Seol falls to his knees, clutches his head, and screams. Where did all the muscles go? Yuhan Seol doesn't care about where he is at all. In hope, he digs his hands into the tree and tries to lift it. The athlete succeeded. He lifted that heavy tree. Motivating himself, he says to himself, Yuhan Seol, don't worry, you can do it. Labor never betrays. Yuhan Seol's abilities have gone nowhere. He moves on to jumping squatting. 3 months have passed since then. Yuhan Seol has been training all this time. But he had lost all sense in all this because he hadn't gained any muscle mass. Why should he live like this, he wondered. Yuhan Seol pins all his hopes on chickens, because thanks to them, he has enough protein. Everything would be fine. But behind Yuhan Seol's back, a huge rooster, dozens of times bigger than ordinary chickens, appears. The giant asks Yuhan Seol to repeat his monologue about the squirrel and the chickens. Yuhan Seol is in complete shock. He's probably never run away so fast. He doesn't understand why he's doing this. After all, he just wants big muscles. The athlete realizes that the giant rooster is fast and strong. If he hits Yuhan Seol once, he will die. In addition to fear, Yuhan Seol is filled with envy. Yes, the athlete is now envious of the giant rooster's pectoral muscles, because they are so beautiful that you can't take your eyes off them. The athlete is trying to figure out what contributes to the development of such a sternum. Maybe wings? Or maybe it was worth creating a simulator and doing crossover workouts on it. Yuhan Seol thinks that his muscles are not growing because his strength is not enough, because he only emphasized on strength. The athlete doesn't understand how he could forget that abs need to be trained too. The giant cock muscles kept the athlete from getting bored, and even gave him an incentive not to die. After all, Yuhan Seol also wants such a wide chest. Yuhan Seol continues to run away from the giant rooster. Chickens, which Yuhan Seol called sticky chickens during the race, appear in his path. When the giant rooster heard this, it sped up. Han Seol, fearing for his life, shouted, "Chickens, forgive me." In the process of the race, Han Seol somehow miraculously gains the muscle recovery skill. Han Seol changes direction towards the rooster. Usually everyone thinks that muscles appear during workouts, but this is not true. Muscles break down during exercise, and in such a state, muscle function is temporarily weakened, and thus strength falls. But if the muscles get the necessary nutrients and rest, after a while they become bigger than they were. And this is called regeneration. Simply put, muscles get stronger not during training, but during rest. So if recovery is faster, so is muscle mass growth. So the sooner Han Seol builds up muscle mass, the sooner he will stop being a choker. But suddenly, Han Seol pushes off from the tree and jumps over the giant rooster. The giant rooster doesn't expect this and crashes into the tree. Han Seol thinks he wouldn't bet his life on it. After all, he always wanted to have relief muscles, so he repeated the exercises thousands, millions of times. But suddenly something magical happens. Suddenly Han Seol's hand becomes huge. Without thinking long, he punches the giant rooster with one hand, touching the rooster's head with his hand. Han Seol felt that there was a penetration, and the giant rooster's head shattered into pieces. With joyful eyes, Han Seol is already thinking about the giant rooster's brisket. After all, he's eating with gusto today. In the beginning, Han Seol didn't know what this place was or who lived here, and what kind of situation he would find himself in later. Later that night, when Han Seol is eating a rooster, several creatures watch him from afar and approach him. When the sportsman saw them, he was frightened and asked who they were. They introduced themselves as ghoul and said they lived in this place called alley mines. Gaius has told his dear ancestors that he doesn't consider humans meat. But this is the first time he has heard of these ghouls. The ghouls said they were looking for the one who defeated Cockatrice. Does he happen to know who they were asking? The boy did not hold back long and said that he was the one who had punished him. When the ghoul heard this, they were overjoyed. To summarize what Dust had said, the strongest monster of the alley mines was dead, and now the battle for territory had begun between the various species. Examining the ghouls, the athlete noticed that their legs were very thin. If you hit them, they would break. Ghoul kept saying that Cockatrice wasn't known for his intelligence, but he knew his territory well, and for that reason, they are earnestly seeking help from the guy who defeated Cockatrice. Han Seol pretended not to hear and asked the ghouls to repeat the part of the words where they asked for help. Frustrated Ghoul said that they had already repeated the words for help 10 times. The angry sportsman said that when you do something, you have to repeat it 10 times, and asked Ghoul if he understood. The ghoulies decided to leave, but Han Seol stopped them and said that he had to practice and didn't have time to help them. The ghouls did the guy a favor and said they wouldn't waste time either. But Han Seol, in his kindness, offered them chicken breast. After all, he can't eat it all by himself. For the ghouls, this offer was very tempting, for they hadn't eaten fresh meat in a long time. The athlete asked him to apologize, but Ghoul said it didn't matter much, and thanked him for such a gift. When the sportsman saw Ghoul lifting the meat, he got worried and stopped him. He said he might break his back by doing so. The athlete stated that Ghoul doesn't realize what just happened because he will now say goodbye to his back forever. A stunned Ghoul immediately apologized. The sportsman wondered if they knew how to lift weights, but the ghoulies didn't understand what the athlete wanted from them. Taking Han Seol's face, he realized why they were so suffocating. And he told me that once in elementary school a teacher told him that you can only truly learn something by giving someone knowledge. So if his success in sports stops, let Han Seol try to teach others. Taking this meat with one hand, the athlete suggested they eat together, and then go to their habitat. Upon arriving at the Ghoul settlement site, the athlete was met by one of the Ghoul who also had a lean body and sagging belly. The fat Ghoul introduced himself as Lord Ghoul, the ruler of all ghouls. Lord Ghoul asked the athlete if there had been any difficulties on the way here. The athlete stared intently at the Ghoul Lord, insulting him by having long legs and a huge belly like a toad. He immediately noticed that sports were not enough in his life. Lord Yupari praised Lord Han Seol's gift. He said he had ordered his subjects to bring the remaining meat as well. When Han Seol heard this, he said, "It will take them a long time to do that." The Lord laughed, and he said that you should not worry about his servants. Without waiting long, Han Sol told the dumbass to get straight to the point. The Lord said they were in big trouble for defeating cockatrice. In his opinion, the ghouli are the weakest people in the alley mines. They can't fight hand-to-hand, and they don't have many skills except for me, so they have to eat corpses to survive. When Han Sol heard about the skills, he wondered what he was talking about. The Lord ordered to bring in the ghouls, which brought Han Sol in. Ordering his guards to kneel before him, the Uvirians wondered why the Lord had called them. The Lord said that sometimes a criminal doesn't realize his guilt, and ordered his subordinates to bring a bat. The oath of unquestioning loyalty to a stronger monster is at the core of our discipline. The Lord said he wanted them to convince the victor over cockatrice, but they had brought him here and made him a subordinate. But how dare they lie to their Lord? He asked. The Lord sentenced them to pay for their deception with their lives, and used the skill to make the bat twice as heavy. An angry Han Sol stops the bat with one hand and says that they distracted him from practicing. He also sees that it is not their custom to hurt the weak. The guy asked Lord to answer him, but Lord didn't care. He thought he hadn't activated the skill and seemed to have loosened the bat a bit when he let go of it. After all, the skill and strength had simply weakened. Otherwise, this rascal wouldn't be able to repel his attack, the Lord thought. The Lord said that the lad seemed to be very fortunate, so the Lord decided to give him a great honor by showing his skill. Using the weighting skill, you can increase the weight of any item from 2 to 10 times. The Lord said he had enough mana to quadruple that weight. That seemed like pure fraud to the guy. Lord tells Han Sol about all these skills, and eventually the bat breaks up into several parts. The athlete said that what Lord calls a skill looks really cool, so he's not even thinking about becoming an enemy. But now the guy said that what surprised him the most was Lord's character. Trenchless athlete walks up to Lord and uses an unexpected skill, raising one arm forward and grabbing him by the throat. The guy asked how strong is he to control other people's lives? And on top of that, he wondered how much he could lift lying down for an approach of 3. Fearless Lord asked the athlete if he wanted to exchange 3 punches with each other. The guy said the 3 main super exercises are the bench press, the deadlift, and the squat. They are the most important, so they usually ask you what your weight is in those 3. When he started the barbell lifting contest, the Lord told the young man not to forget that he had promised to become his subject if he lost. The guy looked at him and advised him to remember to keep his muscles tight so his back wouldn't break. Lord laughed out loud and told the athlete that he didn't realize his weight worked in the opposite direction as well. Taking the barbell, Lord used the skill of weighing from 1 to 4. Without any effort, Lord Ghoul took 200 kilograms. A satisfied Lord yielded the barbell to Guy. Guy said Lord had surprised him and advised him to use his gluteal muscles a little more next time. Turning around, the athlete told the ghouls to watch closely. After all, if he won, he would make them do the same. The guy sat on the ground to start the competition and began warming up, stating that the deadlift is a full-body exercise that allows a person to exhibit the greatest amount of sleep power they are capable of. Usually everyone thinks that an athlete lifts a barbell using the muscles of the back, but in fact the lower body is most actively involved. Han Sol noted that there is always a risk of injury, so you need to relax your hip joints and pay close attention to your execution technique. The first thing you have to do to start doing the deadlift is to put your feet shoulder-width apart and straighten up, Guy said. Next, straighten your chest and then tense your back, lower back, cortex muscles, and buttocks, assuming the correct position. And in the third exercise, you have to start lifting the barbell along the horizon line, transferring the momentum from the feet through the calves and budura to the whole body, said the athlete. And the fourth is when the barbell is at knee level and suddenly Lord interrupts him and asks if he can lift it. By weighting the barbell 4 times, all of a sudden, with all his might, the guy throws the barbell in the air. He says he didn't use enough force. Seeing this, some of the ghouls were surprised, knelt down and asked the new Lord to accept them. Suddenly, someone shouted, "The Lord of Ghouls takes the throne." But the boy noticed that the Ghoul Lord, who had lost in their contest, listened to him without question. But there were some things that the guy learned from the dialogue with the former Lord of the Ghoul. It was surprising for the guy, because this world was not like the one he lived in before. After all, there's a legend that once in this world, entities can return to their home world. But if the athlete returned with this body, he thought, he would be considered dead. So Han Sol decided to postpone his return. For in this place called Lesha, the law of the jungle reigns. And for this reason, the ghoul lord has sworn allegiance to Consol. The athlete told the ghoul, not to be confused, that he would be called Old Lord. Old Lord agreed without offense. The Old Lord decided to show the place where they train warriors. When he arrived at the place, he was expecting something like this, seeing Ghoulai's physical form. The athlete asked the Old Lord what kind of training they do here. A puzzled ghoul said that they had never had a training session like this. After scratching his head, the guy said that a top-notch coach can make his own training equipment and train his guys, ordering all the ghouls to line up in 5 rows. The boy said he had heard that the ghouls were considered the weakest creatures here and had to live on the scraps left by the other monsters. The athlete said that what they need most is strong bodies. From now on, and during the 3 months of training, he will make fighters out of you. When the ghouls heard these words, they were overjoyed. From now on, they would not be looked down upon. When he heard that everyone was in agreement, the guy ordered them all to get on their stomachs and start doing push-ups, calling them unfit. After 3 hours, the ghouls could not find a place to sit down. Sweat was pouring off them. But suddenly the Old Lord appeared and said that there was not a single ghoul left to survive. The guy ordered them to do another 100 push-ups, but the ghouls had no more strength, and they started talking among themselves about the Old Lord of the Ghouls. When the guy finished the exercise, he told everyone to stand up. The gooks were over the moon, hoping that now they would ride. The guy couldn't stand it and yelled at Ghoulai that with that attitude they were the weakest here. I mean, they said it was like the jungle. And in the jungle, the weak are the first to drop their hooves, said the boy. The guy told the weaklings to get the hell out. But to those who stay, he said he'd give muscle to protect the most valuable thing. Han Seol wondered what it means to be a true trainer, to be someone who has extensive knowledge of muscles, or someone who can push his body to the limit. After all, for some, it is possible because they know how to turn their knowledge into unrivaled results. But you can't say they are the best coaches. The best coach is the one who gives a student with zero motivation the will to continue playing sports, telling all the remaining ghouls to believe in him until the day they die. After all, they had put all their power into becoming the best version of themselves, shouting to the ghouls to do push-ups for their parents, for their health, for their new selves. The will of the ghouls became stronger, and none of them complained anymore, because Han Sol's words had hit the target. And it was at that moment, regardless of Han Sol's will, that his coaching skills reached a new level. 3 months later, the ghoulies were guiding the ghoulies toward the refuge. They said that, according to the scouts, they were heading in the right direction. One of the attackers asked if they would use their fighting abilities against them, but the chief said they didn't need to and ordered them to just attack. He raised his knife to the sky and said this would be the first cannibal colony, and he ordered everyone to fight. When he saw them on the horizon, the Old Lord said they were humanoid. The boy immediately noticed that they had well-developed thigh muscles. The guy ordered all the ghouls to tense their chests like they were going to pump abs. Take a deep breath and tense your bellies. Observe the Ghoulai targets and their attack. After the hit, the enemies didn't realize what was happening. I wonder who did it. The guy said loudly, who? The monsters called ghouls, only now no longer the weakest ones here. The ogre saw the ghouls exterminating all their people. He decided that things would be different if they managed to capture the ghoulie commander. The ogre felt the enormous mana of the old ghoul lord. And yet he is only a ghoul, he said. So they must not lose. He shouted loudly to the ghoul lord, ordering him not to hide behind his subordinates, and to step forward. He invited him to fight one-on-one and determine the winner. The old lord was curious and asked Mr. Han Sol how he would react to his opponent's provocation. The athlete recalled an incident when he had an iguana as a child, a very rare species, the sea crocodile, and any minute now, she could be drooling, demanding to be played with. The teeth of a saltwater crocodile had a compressive force of 7,700 pounds per square inch, which means over 2 tons. And even such tremendous force can't break through trained muscles. What should we do with those pets who don't obey? But suddenly the guy came to his senses and jumped at the lizard man with his bare hands like a rocket. With the words "admit defeat," after grabbing the lizard man, the athlete told you to put her on her back first. After that, you have to look into its eyes. With a laugh, the ogre asked the guy to let him go, calling him a crazy asshole. Even as a child, Guy memorized that animals need to let animals know that their master is strong. The ogre was angry and begged Gaius to let him go and not disgrace the war. But suddenly he said he was surrendering. Getting down on his knee, the guy said that he knew it was right in the books. And this is the first victory over a lizard man. A week away from the mines of Ali was the kingdom of Vero County. That day, the stranger held out his sword over the bowed men and said that he was honored that their little country had such brilliant talents as they did. It was the landowner of Vero County who had given them a second-level order to investigate the circumstances of Cockatrice's disappearance. And not to waste time, the county master asked the commander, did he really dare to entrust such an important matter to these rednecks? The commander laughed and told him not to worry. Of course, these warriors are quite young, but they can safely be called geniuses. Manhwa is widely known for his sword skills, having destroyed more than one enemy. If we only talk about technique, he even surpasses the sword master in some attacks. Hindered, who is in the same group as him, uses a huge sword. But the sword is practically blunt, but it has such power that it shreds both the enemy and his weapon. The county master said those words gave him confidence, and he asked about the simple-minded warrior who stood beside him. Was that different too? And of him you may download that he is not good at fencing, said the commander. The district master was indignant at what he had heard and asked why he had to send him too. The commander said they've been friends since childhood and all that. And these two geniuses are very attached to him. At that time, the wars continued on their way, unaware of anything, that they had already stumbled into danger. The enemy, sitting on a tree, tried to take aim at the warriors. But suddenly one of the warriors disappeared and struck the enemy from behind with his speech. The warrior shouted to his men to be careful, for there were hobgoblins hiding among the goblins as well. Attacking his enemies, Hindered shouted that the security of the blog is paramount, and not a single hair should fall from the blog's head. Sitting in ambush, the defenders shouted that they were ready to defend him at all costs. After finishing them all off, they approached Blog and asked if he was okay, and apologized for letting one goblin pass in his direction. But suddenly there was a dispute between the warriors for putting Blog in danger. But Blog stood back and thought. They trained together, but somehow he was always last. While Hanseol was training with his army and lizard men, one of the lizard men said that he couldn't do it anymore. Ghoul said there was nothing to be done, taking the ogre by the legs, told the push-ups with support to start over. After saying goodbye to the ogres, Gaius suggested that they return for further training. But it was clear from the ogres' faces that they did not want to do that. The boy saw his warriors and thought about unloading. After all, when you start training, muscles get injured, and progress is made as they heal. However, if fatigue builds up in the central nervous system, it reduces athletic performance or leads to injury. To avoid this, you need to give your body periodic rest, which is called unloading. Seeing that after 9 weeks of training, Gully has slowed down. After all, yesterday they did 3,500 push-ups, and today they stopped at 3,503. Then the guy decided they needed to unload, so he was going to give them a day of rest. But the next day something amazing happened when all the ghouls showed up for training in the morning. Hansol looked at them and thought they were stronger and taller. I guess the gooks won't need unloading, he thought. The boy said that now that the ogres were gone, it was time to prepare food. But the ghoul's friend asked the boy if they could hunt alone today. The guy asked indignantly, "You decided to skip practice and run away, didn't you?" But one of the ghouls said that wasn't true. They never encouraged coax after all. And all this time, they were only moving the ones Master Hanseol had brought. Since they had developed pectoral muscles, they could defeat them on their own. The guy gave his fighters permission, and it flashed in his mind that now it was possible to increase the training time. Standing nearby, the old lord wondered if the ghoulie builders could win. Hearing this, the boy asked who would win. But the lost old lord told Mr. Hansol not to pay attention. He was just pondering whether the ghoul builders, by joining forces, could defeat Mr. Hansol. Putting his hand on the old lord's shoulder, the guy told him not to worry because a trained athlete would never lose to a rookie. Going on a hunt in the squat, the ghoul builders asked if they had to go that way. The guy only supported them with words, "Great. You did pretty good." But at the moment of relaxation, the back sags and the position is no longer stable. But suddenly one of the ghouls falls and twists his leg. He screams out in pain. When the guy heard this, he told him not to exaggerate and ordered him to get up, while Blog exercises his sword. When he thought about it, he remembered that Ripper and Hindard had missed one goblin and apologized for it. Hindar says it's all because of his weakness, so he can't be trusted. If he had been strong enough to reassure his friends, none of this would have happened. Blog told himself that he must become stronger, and during his vacation, he would train with a sword. But suddenly, the Reaper grabbed his hand from behind and ordered him to put more force on his thumb and visualize it cleaving the air. A frustrated Blog asked Reaper if he woke up because of him. Ripper smiled and said it's all about making Blog feel good, and he pretends he doesn't know about his secret nighttime workouts. Informed the Blog that he could consider it feedback that would only solidify his progress. Seeing Rapper's face, Blog told him that he just blushed. But suddenly Hindar woke up and asked them what the two of them were doing there alone and without him. The Rapper silenced Blog with his finger and asked Hindar how dare he show up here after putting Blog in danger. An angry Hindard said it was getting late, and if he didn't lie down now, tomorrow his body would turn into hygroscopic absorbent cotton. And you also need to sleep when the recovery rate of your skin is maximized, then your skin will be even smoother. Reaper admitted that it was an option he had missed. Keeping his eyes on Hindard, he told the Blog that they would go to bed here tonight when they were done. An outraged blogger said no, and asked why are they arguing over his nap time? The smiling Rapper said they were friends. Blog said, and he asks the same thing, why do friends argue about these things? But Blog realizes that there's no point in asking them because they always say nothing. Blog put his hands down and said it was getting late and suggested we go to bed. But Hindard shouted for us to get ready for battle, for the ogres were coming. But the ogre leader shouted to his men to ignore them. Someone was chasing them, while Mr. Han Seal himself was chasing chickens. The guy unknowingly started creating a new world order, sitting in the bushes and watching the prey. Gaius asked the ghouls if they could catch them. Compared to you, they have more muscle than you. One of the ghouls told Lord Hansol that they were just inflated muscles with no strength. When he heard those words, he was surprised and asked where he had learned such expressions. But suddenly one hen, running after her prey, got stuck between the trees. But this was no obstacle for her, and she broke both trees to pieces. Seeing this, one of the ghouls decided to prove himself and tried to break 2 trees. But he failed. He said he needed to rest for a minute, and he would try again. But the athlete said he needed to rest for 3 minutes. Han Seal tells Ghoul that there is no bench here, so with that in mind, he should move his leg back a little and try to do it that way. But Ghoul tried so hard that his big chest went between the trees. But it was all in vain. The guy believed that the bench press develops all joints, so its effectiveness is very high. But it doesn't work. It was like they were doing push-ups differently. But where did he screw up? The kid thought. When he saw the chicken's wings, Han Seal realized what was wrong. After all, the chickens were making steady progress, so that's why he hadn't noticed the problem. The surprised ghouls asked the gentleman what was the matter. The sportsman said that it was his mistake, that they were not even capable of what these chickens could do. The guy said it was because their muscles were used to his workouts. So the guy suggested they change their workout program, ordering all the gooks to line up in 5 rows. And pointing at the crossover car right behind them, the guy created it to diversify their regular workout. And he started by telling them to clap 3 times. The sportsman came over to the machine and said that from now on we are going to do exercises for the inner chest muscles. And when they master this exercise, they can easily fight with their cute hens. Gully was delighted by Lord Hansol's words, warming him with the warm words of the beautiful lord. Undressing, the athlete began to explain that the crossover trainer is an exercise aimed at working the inner muscles of the chest and giving them relief. The result will only appear when you do it in the right position, so the hardest part is taking the first steps. First of all, the guy said, you have to bend your upper body a little and duck your knees. Second, without straightening your arms completely, fix them so that there is no unnecessary movement during the exercise. Third, once your arms are in the center of the trainer, you should slightly bulge your chest and bring your arms together like a bird flapping its wings and cross them. Fourth, depending on the position of the ropes and the lumbar angle, you can change the impact zone a little bit, but you can't use counterweights, so it's important to fix the body in one position, Guy said. That's all you Han Seal had to say. If there are any unclear details, you can ask ghouls. Saying it was their turn, The guy made some exercise machines. Start a new exercise. The crowd of ghouls were overjoyed at this and fought over the line. With burning eyes, they were burning with this activity, for they wanted to eat quickly. But suddenly, the chickens noticed the ghouls' breasts, and they were amazed at their muscular stature and the fullness of their huge breasts. But for the chickens, it was like a competition. Suddenly, they caught a ray of sunshine and deformed into more pumped-up hens. When Gaius saw this, he noticed that their chicken breasts got even wider. But that didn't stop the ghoulies, and they went into battle. But the guy saw that his fighters were losing the fight. There was disappointment in the guy's eyes because he was doing something wrong. One day, Old Ghoul woke up and realized that guarding an empty house was boring. But it really wasn't. I felt a rumbling in my stomach. He said that Mr. Hansol was good at everything, but he totally disagreed with him about food. So he decided to make coconut peels and batter. The ingredients he will need are freshly peeled coca peel, breadcrumbs, dried aromatic fruit powder, salt, and oil. First, he sliced the coca rind into strips. If he marinated it right away, it would have an unpleasant smell. So first he had to shake the peel with salt and spices, carefully but firmly, like Mr. Han Sol shakes gulai. And after that, he mixes the breading flour with the spices. That's how you can make this magic powder, and immediately spray it on Coke's skin. Perhaps even this kind of magic can defeat even Mr. Han Sol. And after that, if you put the skin on a pan of heated oil, the cuckoos will start to splatter. And when the pieces turn a brownish color, you can say that the coca peel and the batter is ready. While the battle between the gooks and the chickens continued, Mr. Han Sol watched and assessed their chances. Ghoul couldn't understand what was wrong. He thought he had pumped all his pectoral muscles as Master Hansol had taught him, but why couldn't they still win? He wondered. The ghouls couldn't figure out what was wrong. Either the position was wrong, or someone was looking in the wrong place, or there was a problem with the base altogether. The guy came up to them and said that the main difference between them and the chickens is the concentration of time and effort. The ghouls have just been exposed, but they want to beat the chickens who have been swinging all their lives. Ghoul thought about what the athlete had said and realized that such beautiful breasts are not so easy to get. Crossing his arms, Gaius said there was still a way to defeat them, and told them to remember how they came to their current form. With perseverance and spirit, you have reached this level, but you still need to practice constantly. Just because you're a little stronger doesn't take you out of the ranks of the weakest, said the boy. In the lands where Gaius lived, squatting 500 kilograms was his base. After all, you have to train from the roots. Only then will the strength rise higher. So you have to overcome difficulties. Seeing Ghoulie doing his exercises, the guy came over and said that he finally got the gist of what he was saying. Hanseol said that since the pectoral muscles alone can't achieve a pabuda, pumping up the lower body can help. Seeing all the power and source of the ghoul's energy, Guy to them that they had followed his instructions up to this point. Now it was time for them to show effort and passion, but it still didn't work. The chickens scattered them again, and the ghouls didn't know what was wrong. The guy said again in his own words that by the time they got to that point, their whole bottom had relaxed. But the realization came too late, Spurgeon said. But suddenly he stood in front of the chickens and stared at them intently. Seeing Guy's gaze, the chickens got angry and headed towards Guy. When Guy saw this, he used a one-handed push attack and grabbed the chicken. When he got home, the guy said they shouldn't hang their heads. The important thing is that they are making progress. Today you'll have squirrels, and tomorrow you can catch them yourself. Shout out to everyone. Together for the muscles. Now, whoever has chicken feet in their hands, do 300 push-ups each, said Mr. Hanseol. The boy told his charges that they still had a long way to go, and that they should consider what they had learned so far and begin hunting with caution. The ghouls asked Mr. Hansol if he would go with them. Hansol said that he would train himself first and then join them. After all, daily training is more important than any battle. Taking the coach, he felt very little weight. He thought that perhaps he should have brought the eldest lord with him. One of the ghouls said they probably already knew they could summon Coke in today's form. But if, like yesterday, someone evolves, it will become dangerous again. A disgruntled ghoul asked, what should they do then? Just train and come back? He said no, because neither Mr. Hanseol nor the old lord gave us clear criteria for victory. Although the cockatrice is strong, but if it's only one, It can be considered that Mr. Han Seol caught a total of 27 cockatrices in the evening, and the cockatrice said ghoul. So while Mr. Han Seol was distracted, all they had to do was split up and catch 50 coke. And that could be considered a psychological victory. The old ghoul decided to split into 3 teams, and if they suddenly encounter danger, we'll send each other a signal with our strong muscles. The ghoul seemed to see that they had guessed. He shouted, "Let's have some fun and have a riot." Suddenly, a huge skeleton headed towards the warriors. They thought it must be the bones of cockatrice. Hindered saw cockatrice's head, which was lying separately. It seemed that someone had used powerful magic to tear it off in one blow. Blog said that the only one who could magically blow cockatrice's head off was the king's high mage, Adam. Blog was alarmed by this and asked, "Are they sure they can do the job?" The rapper told Blog not to be afraid. After all, they won't let him get hurt. An offended Blog told them to focus on their responsibilities, but the friend heard a strange rustling in the bushes and ordered Blog to hide behind their backs. Something seemed to be coming toward them again, but it was the roosters. But suddenly, out of nowhere, the ghouls appeared above the cocks. The Reaper told Hinder to get up beside the Blog. After all, it was the first time he had ever seen such monsters, but the ghouls stopped, and one of them said that people are cruel people and like to kill, because they don't know how they will behave. The Blog asked what they are doing. Does it look like some kind of performance to exaggerate their danger? The ghouls decided to summon a second and third team. After all, quantity can reduce danger. Is rapid muscle growth a blessing or a curse? Thought the ghoulie. If you cross the boundary of one species, you also increased your chest of coxcombs. Seeing this, Hindered said that this cockatoo's combat skills were not inferior to those of wyverns. Turning around, the chickens attacked the ghoulies. But the ghoulies realized they had made the wrong choice and failed. But the heads of the second and third team flew over the ghouls. They all lined up and went to fight the chickens, taking all the energy from the lower parts of the body. Ghoul remembered his training with Yuhan Paul, how he had told him to watch his technique. And when you can't perform an exercise with proper technique, the right thing to do is to seek help from someone experienced. But suddenly the ghouls used an obscure attack, a secret version of the bodybuilder's ghoul builders, using the reverse press. The main ghoul is yelling for them to tear it all up and not worry about the ones in the back. They say they will put all their muscle power forward. Taking the chicken's head, the ghoul told them to try to endure the roar of their pecs. One of the ghouls said he couldn't get any support, and he thanked everyone for their time together. But the main ghoul yelled for another 0.3 seconds. And that's enough time to know whether someone is arousing interest or disgust. After all, 486 seconds had passed from the first encounter to the present. That was enough time for the 3 swordsmen to answer the call of the pectoral muscles of the ghoul builders. But unfortunately, the call was answered by the cockatrices, and the huge cockatrices looked at the warriors with a fierce gaze. The Blog holding ghoul was surprised and scared, and said this size is more suitable for a dragon. In ancient history, there was a dragon, and this ancient dragon craved glory. He was afraid that future dragons would surpass him, so he took extreme measures, and that choice was in the division of power. And that's how the current dragons and basilisks were born. Hindered said it wasn't a dragon, but with this victory, he can gain the recognition of his mentor. At that time, the unsuspecting Wan Seol was still working up a sweat, trying to build up his pecs, but he said they say that beginner athletes build muscle faster. But compared to ghoul builders, his muscle mass doesn't grow. Without getting upset, he said that these newcomers always follow him flawlessly. It had been 3 months now. They were panting, whimpering babies, and they had to be taught step by step, like real little children. But of course they wanted to give it all up, but that too was temporary. And only their persistence made sure that none of them gave up. But they also had developed fine muscles that even pleased the boy. But today, for some reason, he needed the firm hand of his mentor. But suddenly, Ghoul comes out of the bushes and shouts, "Mr. Han Seol." He says there has been a disaster. The Koki have suddenly evolved, and now they are all in danger. At this rate, they could all die. The boy didn't hesitate long and told the ghoul to show him where they were going. The guy taking all the energy also evolved to the point of being impossible and asked, who dared to attack his little ones? He took a big leap and arrived at the battle site. The ghoulie were surprised and overjoyed when they saw Han Seol, while the warriors continued to fight the chickens. The Reaper ordered Hindered to distract the enemy. He would try to hit the vital organs. Hindered used a secret technique of throwing sand and shouted to Blog that he had bought time with the sand pole and ordered him to run immediately. The Blog called him a fool. He said he shouldn't have stalled. He should have attacked. I mean, that would have put Reaper in jeopardy. Blogo got angry and asked why Hindar showed him a thumbs up and told him to ignore it, simply ordering him to fight at full strength. Reaper raised his hands and told Hindered that Blog was paying attention. As Hindered was running away, he yelled to Blog to run away because even at full strength they couldn't win. While the ghoulie gathered and used a last principle attack, a set of united support. Chief Ghoul ordered everyone to hold on and have faith in their friends, who went to call for Mr. Hansol's help. For Mr. Hansol will surely be here before we fall, and keep faith in our friends. But Koka intervenes and destroys the pyramid of the ghouls. It's a disgrace, says one of the ghouls, but tragedy takes it all away overnight. But suddenly Koka is on the scale of strikes. Koka screams in pain. When they saw Mr. Ghoul, they were very happy that he came without being late. But suddenly their old lord appeared out of the dust. The ghoulies were very surprised at his arrival and asked what he was doing here. As Huang Sol went from place to place looking for Goulet, he kept flying back and forth, but suddenly the chickens surrounded the old lord of ghouls. The overlord asked them if this was all they could do. The blog said that this monster is similar to the lord of the ghouls. Is he stronger than these birds? Hindered told the blog that he had just seen his powerful attack. The ghouls standing next to the warriors told them to be careful. This is nothing less than the treasure of their village, Mr. Old Lord. The ghouls shouted to Mr. Old Lord that they knew he had a plan. In the end, even he, the Old Lord, couldn't handle them face to face. That's right, said the Old Lord. After all, he pissed them off, so now defeat them. Mr. Hanseol, shouting for Mr. Hanseol to come out, he saw no one around. He began to worry why he hadn't shown up. 6 hours ago, a ghoul woke up in a ghoul settlement, grabbed his stomach and remembered he was out of food, and he thought of going to meet them. After all, Cockatrice was gone, and there was no danger in his path. 5 minutes ago, he heard the screams of the ghouls. With an angry shout, he asked who dared to touch them and the servants of Console. After all, no one but him and Hansol San dared to insult the bodybuilding ghoulies. The Old Lord, unlike the ghoulies, did not participate in bodybuilding training, and yet the Old Lord's position was not inferior. But how had he done it? Perhaps the trained ghoulie builders were inferior to him in strength, the reason being that there was nothing left for the Old Lord to do but to hone his skills to remain Hansol's right hand. Then one day he discovered that his weight had reached its maximum level. Weight 1 out of 10. Taking a huge rock, he lightly tossed it into the sky and, applying magic weighting to 10, said, "Die, chickens." One of the ghouls cheered the Old Lord with words as he was able to hit them with his fist. Maybe he is as strong as Lord Hanseol. The strict lord thought that not everyone would be able to defeat such a huge chicken in one go, and he was also born a ghoul lord. So it's ridiculous to compare his abilities to those of normal children. He pulled himself together and said he would fight the winged creatures. "Because Old Man Lauder will crush you," he said. But seeing his assertive nature, the hen swung her leg and Old Man Lord flew into the sky. The blog saw this and decided to apologize to Hindered and Rapper for not always laughing at their jokes. Hindered said he's sure he'll miss them in the afterlife, but his end won't be lonely because his friends are with him. Hearing Hendrick's words, the ghouls also tense every muscle cell, even if they have to interrupt to go into battle to do so. To thank Mr. Hansol for his training, they were so grueling, but they were able to touch a bit of real strength and went into battle. But if revival happens, let them have a chance to learn from Lord Hansol again, Ghoul said. The boy found the Old Lord and listened to him. He said that their servants were being defeated in battle, and the Lord's last words were to save the ghouls. In the process of fighting, the chickens started to run away. The gooks were surprised by this and asked themselves where they had run away to. Having caught up with the sportsman, the chickens surrounded him. But Hansol said to the voices of his ancestors, "You cannot go on." For now he was as calm as ever. Hearing the call of the pectoral muscles, the ghoulie definitely recognized their master Hansol. Blog was interested and asked what the heck was that? Ghoul told him that he was their mentor, leader, and the ultimate muscle mass master. Simply put, this ghoul was their new Lord Ghoul named Yuhan Sol. Still, Blog's explanation wasn't enough. The chickens were staring at Han Sol so intently that they were ready to eat him whole. But when he attacked him, he used a one-handed push attack, and the chicken flew up into the sky. The others saw this and decided to attack too, but in pairs. The guy had already prepared an army press attack for this. Using the shoulder group, Han Seol seemed to split their legs into several pieces. But the chickens didn't stop there either, and Guy had to use a powerful schwung attack. The athlete was already annoyed by this mess and performed a somersault in flight and smashed the chicken's head in midair. The guy said his ancestors told him that chickens answer the call of the pecs of rapid evolution, so he managed to call out to you. And they quickly found Guy. With his pecs, he could penetrate deep into their pecs. But can it be done with him? But suddenly he got the idea to attack with a CrossFit burpee. He accelerated and hit the chicken in the forehead. While performing a tricep strengthening exercise, he picked up a log and hit the chicken like it was the last time. Seeing this, Blog asked, "Is this person a ghoul lord? What kind of power does he possess?" The guy was in labor, and by the time he got here, his lower body was already exhausted, and he realized there was no need to delay. If he could finish them off with just a couple of hard blows, he thought. Boy, the old lord kept saying in little man's ear that he was dying. He had asked Han Sol to kill him. He couldn't face the old lord who had been helping him with his training all this time. The guy realized that one day he would have to end it all with one strong move. With all his strength in his arms, he used a chest-to-chest attack. And he grew so big that the chickens couldn't take their eyes off him, with the whole team behind Mr. Han Seol. The ghoulies have stepped up their strength training with support. When he saw Ghoulie, the guy was more than strong. And with his forward flight, he smeared the chickens. But he was also able to thank the old lord for his help. The ghouls bid farewell to the old lord and discussed amongst themselves that before Han Sol came, the lord was evil, but under Han Sol's leadership, he became an excellent boss. The guy on the ground was wondering who was going to help him with his training for the next few days. But suddenly the old lord's voice came out of nowhere. He asked what was wrong with them. After all, the old lord had decided it was not the time for him to interfere and had decided to take a nap. When they saw him alive, the ghouls and Han Seol pounced on him with hugs. The old lord was frightened by their actions and almost died. The boy was glad the old lord had come to see them and asked him to help him with his studies. Warriors who have gone through many hardships have come to the village of Vero County, reporting that Han Seol defeated Kokari single-handedly, and he killed Kokari himself with his own hands. The county master said that monsters like Ghoul aren't a threat to them, but this guy could be dangerous. After all, they don't know when other species have bared their teeth. We need to think hard about what to do with this guy. The commander asked where the blog went. The rapper remembered how the alien tried to hurt Blog, and it was Han Seol who offered to make him stronger than he is now. If Blog agrees, he'll offer to train with him. The rapper said there was nothing left for them to do but surrender. So they asked their mentor to rescue Blog from the clutches of these monsters. The county master said he thinks the words of instruction are some kind of black magic, but there is no information about them. He feels sorry for the captured warrior, but we are such an unorganized country to be in danger in such an uncertain situation. Besides, young warriors, your mentor doesn't give in to immediate feelings so easily. They leave today and start practicing with their thoughts. But the commander has ordered the landlord district to send all the warriors into battle. The district master told the commander not to get emotional. But the commander was very angry. The commander asked the warriors if they were going to go into battle. After all, this criminal had crossed the line and captured his student. Pulling himself together, the commander ordered Hindered and Reaper forward. They planned to sweep the alley mines today. On the ghouls' training grounds, the guy was introducing a new student and repeating back to him what he had learned, starting with squats. The blog asked, "What are squats?" The guy said squats are a great sport that helps develop your thigh muscles by constantly working with your own body weight. Simply put, squats are all about standing up and squatting down. But to avoid injury when moving the weight, we need to maintain proper posture. The guy told Blog to spread the heels of his feet to pelvic width and point his knees toward his middle toes, then sit up using his pelvis and knees. Let Blog give strength to his pelvis and hips, and then let him stand up, pushing himself off the ground, Guy said. After seeing Blog do it, the guy liked it for the first time. He asked Blog if he had ever studied. But Blog said he had only studied fencing. But the guy decided to test Blog and told him to stretch his arms above his head and squat down, and he would put the barbell on his hands. Seeing Blog's strength, the athlete shouted to him over and over again, and Blog lifted the barbell over his head. The boy was convinced that Blog was not weak. The guy looked at him and said the weight was probably close to the limit, but he stood up without breaking his stance. The guy made sure his eyes were definitely not deceiving him. And Blog has the exemplary physique of a powerlifter. The guy asked the Blog. He subscribed to it because he wants to get stronger, right? Blog said of course yes, because he wants to become strong like his friends. But Guy tells him that becoming strong like his friends won't work. The Blog said that he actually already knew that a regular guy like him couldn't keep up with the geniuses. But thanks anyway, Mr. Han Sol. After all, even he, under his guidance, could probably at least try to reach them. After all, Gaius had told him he would be strong in another respect. So strong that the pitiful fencing of his friends would be no match for him. An athlete told Blog that he had the best talent in the world. When Blog heard this, he cried because he had never heard such words before. Ghoul wondered why Mr. Han Sol had brought Coke's baby chicks. He said that they could be hunted too, but if you hunt them without thinking of the consequences, you might run out of chicken breasts soon. So Mr. Han Sol will try to divorce them before the hunger strike begins. The old lord said that it wouldn't be difficult to raise cocks quickly, but here in the alien mines, there were almost no monsters capable of defeating cocks. Fortunately, we've already become stronger than them. But still, if they evolve, no one but Han Sol-san will be able to deal with them. But Lord Han Seol looked angrily at the old lord and said that he was almost disappointed. After all, they are not weaklings. In the training session, Mr. Han Seol was telling Ghoul to use his thigh muscles to defy gravity, while Old Lord was training Blog in the bench press, using a weight of 1 out of 10. But suddenly war came to their territory. The commander saw them and struck them down with his omniscient sword. The ghouls didn't realize what had happened. Old Lord Commander asked, "Is he the unscrupulous monster who took his disciple?" The Old Lord panicked and said that he was seeing him for the first time. In fact, the Ghoul Lord's throne had been taken away from him. The commander got angry, raised his sword, and said he should have just said yes or no. But Gaius stopped him and said that even dogs don't bark during sport. And who is he anyway? The commander was surprised that this guy was able to stop his sword with his body. With an angry look, the guy said how dare he leave a wound on his muscles. Commander to realize who is the lord of the ghouls. While Raper shouted to Blog that they were squatting with their mentor and calling him over to them. The commander apologized for the interruption of training and said that perhaps they should not have lured the foreign student to their side. The guy realized that Blog already had a coach and said it was rude to do that. The guy smiled and said that as far as the Blog is concerned, he likes working out more than fencing. Blog had the courage to tell his mentor that he liked coaching better than sword fencing. The Blog is grateful that they came after him, but unfortunately, he has a new mentor. The commander said there's nothing we can do. Since the drill made the wrong decision, we will have to use force. The commander swung his invincible sword at Guy, but Guy only took a stance and deflected the blow. The commander said it hurt his pride, but then he decided to do something else. He decided to fight the sportsman and whoever won would bring him back to his place. The boy laughed, calling the commander an auntie. He said he didn't know, but training is not a martial art. It's more like self-education through overcoming the resistance of your own will. The commander said that the kid had defeated cockatrice. Didn't he do it by his own friction? The commander asked. The guy said it was just to get protein. He's always fighting just to survive. In this case, the commander said that his training was of no practical use. When he heard these words, the boy became very angry with him. Simply put, the commander thought that training was useless nonsense. But suddenly Han Seol lost his temper and said that he would show him what real training was. Looking at them, Gully wondered who was stronger, Mr. Han Seol or this human woman. Blog had told them that one couldn't judge by looking at the physique alone. Nevertheless, the mentor was one of the 10 strongest warriors on the continent. Looking at the commander, the boy analyzed her body, but he didn't understand how she managed to injure him. After all, It was impossible to cut his muscles with a sword. The commander wondered what kind of martial arts he was teaching his goons. As for her swordsmanship, that's how she uses her fighting energy to deal with her enemies. As a senior fellow in life, the COO decided to teach Guy a life lesson or two. After hitting the commander, Guy missed. The commander said it was because the mana color around him was scarlet. Meanwhile, mana turns scarlet in demonic entities. It's also how Gaius fights. Normal people don't have techniques that can change the body. The boy disagreed with the commander, for the body changes with effort. After all, the commander doesn't even know the basics. But the commander kept standing his ground, claiming that ordinary people could use battle energy ED mana, pulled out his sword, and showed the combat energy destruction clinic. Said they make up for the missing power. In other words, Guy's training is completely useless to humans. It's just useless trash to humans, said the commander. Lying on the ground, Han Seol said, the opponent she met today. Tomorrow, he will be much stronger than today. The commander said with a caustic chuckle that there was no need to worry about that. After all, today's opponent simply shouldn't live to see the next meeting. But the guy got strong and used a brilliant double biceps frontal attack. And he said that everyone who trains in the gym always gets stronger to beat yesterday's self. But suddenly Guy's eyes lit up and, becoming huge, he said that now it was time for him to teach the team. Reaper and Hindered approached Blog and said they had decided never to see him again, so they brought a mentor. Although both Rapper and Hindered realized that Blog would hate them like idiots after this, they said Blog left them because they were always pushing him. But Blog denied what they said because he wanted to train. And as soon as he finished training, he would come home. When the guys heard that, they got excited. And Rapper wondered what kind of training he was doing. And since he was determined to learn, they would stay with him, too. Blog said he didn't know yet, as he had only recently started researching. He suggested they go to the Old Lord, and he would help them. The Blog asked them if they remembered what they learned when they met a mentor and started fencing. The Rapper yelled legs. That's what Blog said. The exercise they're doing now is for the legs too, especially that part. It's called squats, and it's especially effective for the thigh muscles. In the end, Mr. Han Seol said the most important thing is to have the right posture so that the exercise is safe. When he saw Blog building up large weights, the Old Lord asked if it was too dangerous to increase weight in this way, without any system. At that time, Guy and the commander continued to fight over the Blog. The commander kept defending himself and taking offense because boyfriend was always weakening the force. The guy said it doesn't weaken. It's a force that attracts. But the commander heard some sounds nearby. So he asked Reaper what they were moaning about. Seeing Rapper and Hindered practicing, he would see them and he ran over them and told the kid to take a break and asked this, what's another workout? The athlete said it was a weighted squat, one of his workouts. But suddenly everything turned around and the commander apologized and said he suddenly wanted to send them to the guy's workout. When Mr. Han Seol heard this, he asked her what she thought of the training. Without thinking long, the commander replied, hot passion. After all, she had seen the pleasure of guys sweating in training. Seeing the commander's forearms, Gaius was surprised and asked what sport she played. It's really nothing. She's been swinging a sword all day. Maybe that's why it started. But she's the one who wants to ask the guy a question. Is he really agreeing to teach his special art for free? The guy said that the more people he trains, the better. Of course, that's fine. If a guy says so, cool gyms will open up everywhere. Research and create new workout programs. And if it's possible, Guy said, he'd like to see every corner of Sweet Lesha infiltrate the gym's culture. Hearing the boy's goals, the commander said she was interested in him. And whenever he wants, she is ready to listen to his request. That fine evening, everyone went out to dinner. The Blog decided to approach Han Seol and tell him that he might not have known about it, but discrimination was rampant in the Vero district where he lived. And it's not just species that are different from humans, but magic and other religions as well. But in other words, it's not just humans that rule all, it's swordsmen. Young people like him say that Blog is certainly less prone to such behavior, but still worries that his feelings and Yupari's feelings might be hurt. Upon hearing this, the guy said it was a serious problem. The Blog suggested that it might be worth waiting a little longer, and then consider a new visit. We went to where the horses eat. The guy tasted their food and said it was rough and a little tough. That's the main thing to stay healthy. When he picked up the oats, he realized they were pure carbs, but only horses eat them. He said it was very serious. When the people around him saw Gaius tasting the horse's food, they were surprised. They called him a barbarian, but suddenly, the old lord approached them and said that the monsters would be very upset if they heard such a thing. The old lord said that he was trying to pool their battle supplies and suggested they try their bunkhouse. When the men saw it, they were surprised, and the subtle odor beckoned them. When they tasted the dish, they said the sweet flavor had a pleasant spice. It is the savory taste of fire. One of the men said he regained his lost appetite. It's a culinary marvel. The old lord said that if they befriend them, he will give them the recipes. So let them stop insulting the monsters. That evening, the boy decided to approach Ryan and asked him if he remembered that he had promised to fulfill his request. He opened his hand, held it out, and decided he wanted a plant. When he saw it, Ryan asked him if he was talking about cattle feed. Ryan said he heard they were growing coca. I think he decided to feed them to them, but the smiling guy said no, they would eat him. Ryan said he didn't care, but somehow he felt guilty for giving him cattle feed. One of the ghouls said that this lady holds a high position among the people, and it is not worth the risk just to ask for fodder for the cattle. The commander said they weren't wrong. After all, if he asked, she could give him a lot more than he thought. They can change their tent cabins to real wooden houses. Also, instead of walking around naked, she can dress them in real adventurer's armor. But the guy took umbrage and said that eating protein alone is not good. Especially the liver suffers greatly. But eating enough carbohydrates releases glycogen and helps you gain tremendous strength, especially oats, the guy said, which contain a variety of carbohydrates, which means they digest slower and the feeling of satiety lasts longer. There is little colorfulness in it, but it has plenty of nutrients, which is why it was called the king of cereals on the earth where it lived. When the ghouls heard those words, they wanted to try it. The men thought it was some secret that would allow this stranger to compare with their commander. Raper and Hindrith saw them all bent over to eat and decided to try it too. Eventually, they saw that Blog was eating too. The Rapper and Hindrith told Blog to spit it out because it wasn't tasty. But when he looked up, Blog said it was delicious. After seeing Blog devour the food, Guy was convinced that he had great talent and would surely become stronger quickly. But suddenly the commander came up to the guy and said she didn't know what he was talking about. But everyone was pleased with what he said. She said she would try to persuade the count to fulfill his terms. As they approached the kingdom, a subordinate shouted that Commander Ryan was returning, and for everyone to open the doors. Upon entering the kingdom, Blog whispered to Guy that it was the county of Vero, the best on the continent, a realm of discrimination. Putting his hand on Ghoul's shoulder, the guy told them to pose. After all, their bodies look great, so everyone is looking at them. But when they heard Han Solo's order, they immediately began to pose. But the people looked down on them so much that they could not understand why they were so happy. Upon arriving at Verdo's fortress, the head asked after being trained in Trin technique, would he leave here? Would he want cattle fodder as a reward? But the smiling guy said it wasn't cattle feed, it was oats, and oats are a staple of a healthy diet. The head said that the boy's defiant speech made it clear that he was from a barbarian people. But at the request of the commander and his knights, he made an exception and let them into the fortress. If it weren't for this request, they would have been thrown arrows outside the gate to make them look like hedgehogs. The commander bowed and thanked the count for his tolerance. But the angry count told the guy not to make a fuss here, just quietly peacefully train his trainers and left. The happy athlete thanked Earl and invited him to come to practice when he finished his work. The distressed count realized that the commander was popular and feared to sway the feelings of the people to his side. But suddenly, the count jumped up and ordered his subordinates to summon the mercenary order of the title. With a caustic smile, he said that the commander's guests would bring him trouble. Arriving at the soldiers' training field, the coach told everyone to stay put. After all, they have a special training session today. Introducing the new mentor brought in by Commander Ryan. His name is Johann Seol, Lord Goulet. But all of a sudden the soldiers started to resent it, and the coach said he understood their outrage. Well, if they don't honor it, it's a violation of military law. So think carefully before you do anything. A cheerful guy introduced himself and said he would be in charge of their training today. But the guy resented the sight of them because he didn't like them. So he ordered them all to fall down and do push-ups. One soldier started to get indignant, calling Johann Sol a monster. But upon hearing this, The trainer said that he had come to order the commander to listen to the monster unconditionally during training. Sendo asked his mentor, did he really think the monster's words were the same as their commander's? An indignant Sendo ordered everyone to stand up. He asked the warriors if they would really listen to the monster. After all, you can't undermine the authority of the people. But the indignant boy asked him what the problem was. Sendo said that the problems are many. First, they are humans, and they don't take orders from monsters. And secondly, the practical benefits of these three are useless. There is no reason to give up fencing in favor of some other kind of training. And third, they are human and do not wish to learn barbaric methods of training monsters, Sando said. But suddenly the old lord hides and says he will solve it. The first problem can be solved if Blog becomes an assistant coach, and then they will be taught by a human. And secondly, the Lord doesn't know how much more practical it is than swordsmanship because he's never compared them. But he suggested a duel with one monster on their side and one human on the warrior's side. And third, barbarians or not. The old lord offered to settle it privately, calling them arrogant little people. Sendo laughed caustically, thinking that they had mistaken him for a mere student. After all, he wants to show them the full horror of the title's elite squad under the Count's personal command. Sendo didn't waste any time and attacked the monster. But the monster used a one-handed attack mode and broke his jaw. The guy walked up to Sando and asked if he was all right, but the smiling monster next to him said he shuddered. And luckily, he's alive. When Han Sol approached the ghoul, he told him to calm down and asked him if he was using his body to show his strength. But the ghoul immediately apologized. Speaking out against the wars, the guy said they lost, and now they're going to have to listen to him carefully. But suddenly Sendo came to his senses and used his battle energy. He attacked the monster from behind and told it not to dare to order him around. But the old lord saw this and used a weight attack, and the boy kicked him in the stomach with all his speed. But suddenly the commander came and asked the warriors if everything was all right. But all she saw in front of her was a crowd of warriors, so she thought he must have used magic. But the commander turned to her mentor and said she didn't understand what was going on. She ordered him to report the situation. The mentor said that there is a popular belief that monsters should not be listened to. So a contest was held, but our fighter lost in this fight. So the opinion arose that the monsters had cowardly resorted to magic. But the commander turned to Han Sol and asked if he had used magic during the competition. The confident guy said he didn't use any magic, and the mentor confirmed that he didn't feel anything like that either. At that time, a count passed by and, hearing the incredible words, decided to enter. The count asked on which side the commander was more inclined. The commander said she was on Count Verdo's side, but the count kept up with her and asked what words she was listening to now. When he saw Earl, Guy thought he had come for a personal training session and told him to get off his horse quickly. But the old lord stopped Guy and said it was not so and ordered him to retreat. The count tells the commander that she knows how much he appreciates her, but the guests she brings are harming their country. After all, they had damaged one disciple's body and also caused unrest among the other disciples. How could he, as the head of this land, just leave this situation as it was? The count therefore decided to place all responsibility on the commander of Ryan and sent him into exile for 2 years. When the soldiers heard this, they resented the count. But the commander asked them how they dared to defy the count. Ryan said she thought they were just rednecks who knew how to humiliate others, but they have learned to challenge their bosses. So there is room for change. Bowing, Ryan said that she would have to leave to allow the new talent to germinate. Thanking the count, she decided to take advantage of his concern and go on vacation for a while. So, the commander approached the count with a promise that he would have these monsters within 3 months. The count said he would keep his promise. One dark evening, Sendo came out of the castle with a sack in his hands. Tossing the sack up, he said a couple more times and stopped doing the dirty work. As he took out the pendant and looked at his family, he told them to wait because he would be back soon. But at that time there was great sorrow in his village. His house, his village was burning in a great fire, and there was a guy on the mountain who was happy about it. He said that their beautiful homeland had welcomed them with joy. He got down on one knee and asked his Princess Eliza to dance with him. They danced on the mountain while everything below was on fire. Farewell to the commander. God was standing beside her, and she wondered why Blog didn't leave. Blog said there was no practice today, so he asked if he could see the Minter. And Mr. Hanseol gave permission. The commander came up with the idea of stopping by the kid's house on the way out. And the block asked me if I could do it. The Count might find out about it. The commander laughed and said it was okay. She asked Blog what she thought, that she was so weak, not even capable of doing this. An overjoyed Block said he trusted the commander, and he would take her to his place. The commander noticed that there was more power in Blog's voice than before. The commander said that if he got a little stronger, she could marry him. But the Block joked and said she was 60 years old. The commander didn't like that, so she asked, "What? Did he decide to talk about age? Does he think he never gets old?" While the ghoulie were looking for new items to practice. When they found the items, they were very happy and wanted to start practicing again soon. On the way, the commander met the ghoulie and asked them what bullets they were holding. They said that Mr. Hansol had said he needed bullets. The commander wondered how he was going to use them. "They don't even make medicine," she said. The ghouls called the commander with them and said that there was no need for long explanations. It was better to see everything once with their own eyes. The blog suggested that the Minter go with the ghouls. After all, they are not good at explaining things. After all, it's better to see things for yourself. When she saw the guy, the commander said she decided to stop by on her way into exile to see him one last time. Yeah, she was curious what they were doing here. She asked the guy what he was going to do with those slugs. While the old lord was ordering the ghouls to stack the slugs, the guy said he watched the students on the training field and realized that for their style of bodybuilding and powerlifting, the workouts would not be particularly effective. And in this case, it is best to train with a sports coach, but the equipment is too little, so he decided to make it with his own hands. Did the commander say that making equipment out of slugs was a kind of scarecrow that would need to be cut out quickly? The guy said it was not like learning swordsmanship, so the guy asked the ghouls to bring him slugs of any color. The sportsman decided to brag and said that when there is a slug, first they take a small round piece from the inside, and after a few days it regenerates again. And then, in order for them to recover, these bullets have to be assembled separately. And you have to make a hole in the middle of the bullets that have no recovery point. After all, these slugs have simply phenomenal elasticity and compressibility. If you utilize that elasticity, you can stretch with your hands, and then it becomes an exercise belt. The commander probably doesn't know it, but you can do a tremendous amount of exercise with that belt, Guy said. Depending on the color, the compression force is different. Thus, you can develop your own exercises for each pectoral muscle, and you can also use them to learn how to recover and warm up small areas of the body. But suddenly the commander apologized. Hearing this, the guy was surprised and asked why she suddenly changed. The commander said the guy probably didn't know she'd been on guard the whole time. She wondered if he was pretending that he really liked training and that he was nice to people, but she noticed that he always gave himself entirely, without any other thought, to a new endeavor. And she's a real coach, brought up by the Vero County system, in full discrimination, and that's why she's always chasing after the Count. But she's noticed that this guy isn't like that, and she's sure he can bring change to this country. The boy wondered what change she was talking about. Suddenly, a crowd of warriors appeared behind the commander, and she asked him if she could trust him with her boys. Without thinking long, the boy raised his hand and shouted, "Of course." Additional participants joined the group that day. But the winds of change were not only blowing near Console. Arriving at the scene of the fire, the Count said that it was done by their undead enemy zombies. But the most dangerous feature of zombies is their ability to turn people into zombies by biting them. So he ordered his soldiers to be careful and see that neither they nor the horses were bitten. And raising his sword, the Count said, "Attack." At this time there was a fellow standing on the mountain watching the Count's troops, but he was disturbed by his dogs and was distracted by them. "If they show up right now," the guy said, "it might interfere with Ryan. But either way, these zombies are just expendable." The next day at the firing range, the guy gathered all the soldiers and said that last time he said that there were limits to the amount of energy they could expend in a day. And for that reason, he decided that they would not exercise the muscles they needed. And Minter said that today after stretching they would do abs. But the guy suggested to the Minter to do CrossFit instead of abs. But the Minter didn't understand and asked, "What is CrossFit?" The guy said CrossFit is a workout system developed by Greg Glassman. It can be defined as a way of training that involves long workouts of varying degrees of intensity. But in other words, It is a sport aimed at creating what is known as a hexagon for the actions of the various functions of your body. Also, if you train in groups, there can be synergy between students, but also competition. So if the relationship is not too warm, you can't find a more effective way. The guy said he reported the group to the old lord, so he would have them all agree with him. He also wished them to have a full strength training session today. When we started training, everything was going great. But at the same time, the Count's army was fighting zombies. When he heard the same sound again, he asked what it meant. His mentor said that zombies often appeared in their villages outside the fortress walls, so the Count was going to deal with them personally. But apparently the enemies were stronger than expected, so someone keeps sending signals asking for reinforcements. After finishing clearing out the zombies, the Count lined up his warriors. He said that their sentries had reported that an enemy base was nearby. The Count offered his troops to defeat the enemy once and for all, and bring peace to his country. But the Count was approached by his right-hand man. He said, "Are they not going too far?" The Count laughed and said, "What nonsense! After all, zombies don't have any intelligence, and they don't have any strategies. All you have to do is push them back with strength and intelligence." He held out his right hand to watch their father-in-law's warriors deal with the zombies. But the Count told them not to slow down, for this was a battle of courage, ordering them not to stop until they had completely defeated the enemy. But suddenly the army found this guy standing on a mountain. But the fellow, with a wave of his hand, threw his dogs into the battle and overpowered them, saying that now the prize goes to the organizer of this fight, Mr. Ben. But Ben didn't fight. He only gave orders to his dogs. But suddenly the Count saw Ben and swung his sword at him. But Ben laughed and greeted Vero. They had not seen each other for a long time, Ben said. An argument arose between them. The Count asked how he could stay the same if he couldn't even control the battle energy as freely as Commander Ryan. Ben smiled and said he hadn't practiced martial energy, but had researched it a bit. He took the syringe and injected himself. Well, suddenly Ben's size started to increase. The Count asked if he had gotten to the point of experimenting on the human body. When the Count saw Ben, your condition seemed unstable to him. So he decided that before anyone got in his way, he had to defeat Ben. Using his battle energy, he hit the ball and told the unpleasant spirit to return to the next world. But Ben was so much stronger that he struck back, and the Count fell. The Count thought, what speed and power? Well, if he had hit him, the Count would have died on the spot. The Count wondered how he could anticipate the trajectory of Ben's attack. After all, he was inferior in strength. But Ben outnumbered the Count, and when he struck, the Count was defeated. And he realized he was wrong, because Ben was too strong. Although Ben used a completely immoral method, but how did he manage to obtain such a colossal power? Thought the Count. Ben told me that it was just the progress of civilization. After all, the Count has always been ignorant of everything except his precious swordsmanship. That's why they became so weak. The Count said that Ben knows Commander Ryan's strength, and how dare he talk about such things. When he heard Ryan's name, Ben laughed and said he knew her power. But was the Count familiar with the concept of mediumship? Ben asked. Ben pointed his finger and told the Count to look at the image of the battle taking place on the battlefield. Is this called equal combat? Ben asked. It's just a massacre in which a far superior force wins. There are a few particularly capable guys in each area, but they can't be taken as a benchmark. The Count said that it was impossible because their elite soldiers couldn't just lose in this battle. But Ben's patience ran out, and he decided to strike the Count. But his right-hand man appeared out of nowhere and ordered him to retreat. The Count ran away with tears in his eyes. Ben laughed and said that he still cared only for himself. The Count's right hand shouted for everyone to retreat, for they had lost, and told everyone to gather their strength to flee to the earldom, and ordered them to follow the Count and try to survive for the sake of future days. But Ivan himself remained on the battlefield. But Ben had no trouble striking and shattering his sword into pieces. But Ben ordered his men not to pursue the warriors, because they already know where they're going next. Because the Earl is stupid enough to gather them all in one place and kick us out. Riding away on the Count's horse, he felt guilty that it was wrong. But he thought of ways to defeat these monsters and came up with nothing. The Count asked if anyone could borrow a military setting. But the Count was approached by the commander of the Rumi detachment. It reported that of the 400 soldiers, 347 were killed or infected, 27 were wounded, and only 26 were unharmed. The count remembered that there were still 100 warriors left in the fortress, and the rest were apprentices or wounded. And the count thought, how can you fight when there are only 126 men in the army? Commander Rumi asked the count how about calling Commander Ryan back? The count said it's too late. If they send people after her now, they won't be there in time. Rumi asked what the count thought about joining forces with the monsters currently training in the fortress. Rumi said that she heard that Han Solo's representative fights at the same level as Commander Ryan. We give them blood and food. If we ask them for help, it is unlikely they will refuse to go into battle. The count says it's a wedge problem, so she suggests defeating the monster with the monster's powers. That's a great idea, Rumi. The count and Romy came to the soldiers' training ground. The count shouted for them to leave the drill and called a general meeting. The guy asked the count, did he come for individualized training? But the count said, no, he came to give them orders, saying that it's time for the filthy monsters to pay for giving them shelter and food. For from now on, the count orders them to deal with the zombie army gathering in the vicinity of their castle. Pointing his finger, the count said he would give them a chance to die with honor. The count promises to grant the head of Han Solo the status of a citizen of Vero County in a special order. Aren't these the best terms the count asked for? After all, now he could brag about his friction all he wanted. The guy ordered all the gooks to use the double biceps front pose. When the count saw this, he asked what they were doing. The guy said it's bodybuilding, one of the concepts behind the concept of friction. You could call it bodybuilding bragging rights. But the count got angry and said that this was no time for jokes. If they didn't obey his order right now, the guy said if they die and get injured, because then they won't be able to train anymore. The guy asked if the muscle was damaged, would the count be liable? Well, the count pretended not to understand what he was saying. The count felt that he owed them an apology, so he said he apologized. Romy asked the count if he could try to convince them again, but the count said no, because it was foolish to think that the monsters would help them from the start. The count ordered Romy to invite Commander Ox. His character is even, but his talent is only slightly inferior to Commander Ryan. The count has ordered all military forces to be sent to the fortress gates. After all, he wants to show these vile zombies the superiority of humans. But suddenly the walls began to shake, and the count realized that the enemy was closing in. As he climbed the wall, the Ox commander said he had received a report that their leader had intelligence. Ben asked what they would tell him. Ox said they have a large army, but his men are well trained, and they are protected by fortress walls that are not easy to cross. Ox stated that he was the representative of Count Werdo, and wanted to challenge the monster's representative to a duel that would determine the outcome of the confrontation. Ben said it would be fun, and he was willing to take the offer. When the monsters agreed, Ox jumped out of the castle and stood in front of them, and asked who would make the monster team. Upon seeing the opponent, Commander Ox said that the opponent has a great physique, but he wants to see his abilities. When they clashed in battle, Commander Ox felt that his opponent was very strong. Without striking a blow, he was hit back, but suddenly, the enemy spat the substance at Commander Bull. But the commander reacted because he knew he had to dodge. Ox wondered how he had managed to create such a body. After all, he had never seen a body as undead as his. But his rival's friend turned and ran. But Ox said it was the wrong choice, and it would all end when one of them died. Pouncing on his opponent, Ox says he can't break up the sacred bout. But suddenly he gets a low blow from Ben. Ben said he agreed to this fight because he is the only obstacle left in this country. After all, he couldn't even imagine that their goal was not to draw him out, but to draw him into the fight. Ben said, I think they don't call him a woodsman for nothing. He's got the brains of a bull. With a flurry of blows, he smeared his face with blood. But suddenly Ben decided to spare him and ordered his dog to throw him zombie. The last thing Ox wanted was to become a zombie. The count, sitting in the castle, was surprised that even Commander Ox had lost. But Ben shouted at him to surrender, and then maybe he would spare him. But the Earl told Ben not to talk nonsense. Did he really think the Earl would give the earldom to someone with no humanity left in him? Ben heard that the Count had backed out of the deal, admitted he wasn't going to let him live. Pointing his finger at the lock, Ben ordered the doors to be broken down. The frightened Count shouted for bows and arrows. But the poor soldiers had never shot a bow and arrow in their lives. Romy asked what should they do next? The frightened count could not say a word, as he knew nothing, and he fled the castle in shame. Running away from the castle, the count imagined what he would be called in the future. He remembered the words of his father, who said that running away was an act that only cowards did. He mentally yelled at everyone to shut up because he didn't want to run away all the time. He hated running away more than anyone else, but even a cowardly commander has people dear to him that he wants to protect. But suddenly he runs out onto the training field and screams, "Save them!" Grab said he was wrong and apologized for disparaging their coach and humiliating them all. The count said he was ready to give his life to save the people and soldiers of his country, and he asked the boy to help them. The guy said he didn't need life, but there's a price to pay for personalized learning. His team mentor decided to participate too, but Han Seol yelled at them and told them that they were not allowed to participate. The guy said that anyone who hits less than 403 approaches is ineligible to participate in the war. Looking at them, Graf knew they had a different organization. But why did the view behind him seem so cool to him? The guy said it's a straight shot to the front gate. But judging by the urgency of the situation, let's start interval training. The running guy told the goons to maintain maximum strength for 1 minute 30 seconds. Seeing that the monsters were already attacking the humans, the ghoulie used the press and saved the mother and child. A child asked his mother if he could become as strong if he learned to wield a sword. Mom tells her son that this is not the art of the sword, and when the war was over, they would ask together what their technique was. Well, when the guy saw the zombies, he didn't understand why they were attacking and growling. But suddenly the old lord came and said that they have no mind or only hunger left. In short, they could be called walking corpses. The guy said it meant no guilt. Old Town wondered what Guy would do next. The guy said that since they were gathering at the main gate, maybe he should push them away with the strength of his pecs. The old lord said it was an excellent plan, and in that case, he asked if he could take charge of the operation. Taking charge of the operation, the old lord ordered everyone to disperse and ordered the first and second groups to also disperse to protect the locals. In the third and fourth levels, the group climbs a wall to help fight human soldiers. And the first group said that the old lord was helping Mr. Han Sol push the zombies out of the fortress. But suddenly the count ordered the main gate to be closed. He said that although Mr. Han Seol was pushing back the enemies, if there was even a small gap left, they would squeeze through and endanger the inhabitants. But Romy shouted that the main gate had already been destroyed, and there was no gate that could prevent them from entering. But the blog and the team of ghouls who couldn't fulfill the condition brought a lot of weight to close the gates. Suddenly one of the ghouls told Blog to go first, because one of the ghouls had a large thigh muscle that was worn out, and he could no longer move his leg. But Blog shouted that we must not give up. But Ghoul said he understood his feelings when he thought of the form of his older comrades. But if he exceeds his current level and overtrains, he could get injured. And if he gets injured, you won't be able to train tomorrow. So leave him and go ahead, Ghoul said. But Blog said that was beside the point. After all, how could the remaining ghoulie carry this thing? With each step, Blog's eyes slowly clouded over, but suddenly he was relieved. Looking to the side, Blog saw the old lord helping them haul the weights. The old lord ordered the fifth group to join the Geary group, and ordered the gate to be closed soon. With slow, steady steps, they reached their goal. Blog shouted to everyone to keep the weights in their hands, and they confidently closed the gate. The old lord ordered all but the first and second groups to go and push back the zombies along with Han Sol's master. When the guy came to help, he told you to tense your pecs a little harder. But from above, Rumi shouted to them to stop themselves from being bitten by the zombies. Otherwise, they too would become undead. During the battle, the ghoulie were so joyful that Rumi noticed how much fun they were having, and they were having a lot of fun. But suddenly no one expected it, and the zombie bit the guy. He just looked at him angrily and told him not to mess up his muscles. Seeing the guy hit, Ben was surprised. I wondered who he was and why he was helping people. Emphasizing the boy, Ben sicked his dog on him. When the warriors fought back against Commander Ivan and Commander Ox, their revenge was very cruel. He couldn't stand still, so he climbed up towards the castle, showing with his fingers that the enemies were near the tree. They were the ones who had started this whole mess. But suddenly the guy used reverse breeding to reach the enemy. When the count saw this, he said that a miracle was happening before their eyes. Sitting under a tree, Ben watched the war and said that both were useless. Ben says he doesn't want to get into a fight, but since there's a new person here, he'll say hello. Looking at each other, They got to the point where they started fighting without words. Ben asked the guy why he was in his way, calling him a monster. The guy heard this and realized it was a monster standing in his way of training. Grabbing him by the throat, the guy pulled him to the ground. The guy's strength was so great that even Ben couldn't do anything about it. Using a rock climbing exercise, the guy blazed a new trail by throwing it across the ground. You'll see, Ben will lose. The girl decided that she would destroy the source of the danger by turning into something horrible. But suddenly she was stopped by some girl who introduced herself as Aunt Ryan's niece, and her name was Rain. Rain asked the girl, thinking she could defeat her with her pathetic swordsmanship skills, but there was no uncertainty in the girl's words as she loudly said yes. She said she could do it. While the old lord was building his slingshot, he pulled the rubber tighter and tighter, and when he let go, he put his weight on 10. The old lord ordered his goons to load a new shell, and the first group to check if there were any zombies left in the village, and the second group was ordered to close the gaps in the main gate and begin the work of rebuilding, and the third and fourth groups were ordered to stop pushing back the zombies and overpower them in hand-to-hand combat. Watching the battle, the Count noted how skillfully this monster with the strange name of Old Lord commanded the battlefield. A terrifying ability defined the Count, as if he towered over the battlefield and watched everyone from there. The Count said that he once heard from grandfather that among monsters, there are those who side with humans and then become heroes of legends. The hero of the Fourth Great Demon War, the legendary genius of Vadragon. But why did the Count think of that name? Ben's punches at Hansol were useless. In the end, he repelled every one of his blows. But then a +1 of Ben, nicknamed Bonadu, runs in. After all, Bedorman is a mixture of necromancy and wind magic, creating machines of the highest caliber. Bones fly inside Bonadu. Strong as steel, they could easily blow the head off a person without a metal helmet. In addition, a Bonadu attack like this can't do any damage to Hansol at all. Ben said the whole point was that it hurt, so he wasn't going to use that method. So everything that happens from now on is the boy's doing. The boy thought that even though he was getting stronger, Ben wouldn't be able to match his arm strength. But then something strange happens, and Ben grabs Guy by the throat. The guy tried to grasp the muscles in the collar area of his chest, but they were so thick that it was impossible to even grasp them. Ben said that even Guy's eyes couldn't track him, but using muscle contractions depending on the fibers attaching the muscles to the bones. Ben was so reluctant to have someone replace Ryan. He was even upset when he found out she wouldn't be there. But muscles can be divided into white muscles and red muscles. Red muscles play an important role in getting oxygen. Ben asked Guy why he had chosen to intervene, to now face death. But for every blow, Guy used his attacks, using a 5-pronged attack from behind. It was useless to prove anything to the guy, because Ben felt that his attacks were not reaching him. Ben decided that if the attacks didn't work, he would have to hit harder and better. After all, one strong attack, and he would be finished. The guy said the best way to win this battle is to withstand the enemy's attacks and wait for him to run out of steam. Guy, meanwhile, is posing with pecs on the side. Back then, Hansol didn't know that Ben's body wasn't created by nature, and using Jim's attack, they fought as equals. Ben realized that Guy wasn't like that and just showed him his strength. So Ben decided that he needed to avoid forceful confrontation. The guy thought that while Ben's muscle mass was huge, he didn't realize that the most important thing in strength systems is control. Of course, Guy himself isn't used to his body changing at a dizzying rate either. So when that fast Ben finally runs out of breath, while the battle was in full swing, the monster struck and called the warriors weak. And Romy didn't like it. Romy said they know they're weaker than he is. But the strength is in our friendship, much more than his. When Hendrik saw the rapper fighting the monster, he attacked him from behind. But the monster saw that and said he was slow. Well, by inertia, Hendrik couldn't stop himself, and monster was already behind him and didn't try to strike. An incomprehensible lightning bolt skipped by Hendrik's side. When he turned around, it was Hansol, who had defeated the monster with a single blow. Looking at the monster, Hendrik realized that he was now free to join the goons. After all, the monster had already been defeated. At this time, Commander Ryan was vacationing in a settlement on the outskirts. But suddenly a warrior came running and shouting Commander Ryan. Ryan asked what was wrong and why he was barging into a room where a lonely, weak girl was sitting. The warrior said a terrible tragedy has struck the county. Zombies are attacking the county. He said they need her help. The commander laughed and said, they have an army that can handle them. Why do they need one? The warrior said that anything was possible, but the head of the zombies was none other than Ben. When the commander heard the name Ben, she was surprised. The commander reported that there were now 2 shields in the county, as well as a trusted ally named Han Seol, and her favorite niece. And most importantly, a young continental starlet named Rain, who has a beautiful beauty. Lates is a dark time on a continent of endless war. And for the sake of the ancient elves, who were oppressed because of their weakness and dislike of activity and debate, a human physician, Cho Suk Phil Lates, invented and spread a way for elves to learn and meditate. And now the latter have gone beyond sport, using elves as a fighting technique. And Rain lived in the elven forest and studied elven latex. In just 7 years of brass classes, she was able to fully master it. The girl told Rain that she had no way to dodge in the air. In the end, she would ruin her existence. Remembering Rin's training, she said she wasn't even her equal. Maybe she should have cut her down like she did that day. The girl said she would not take advice from her enemies. But the evil Rain told her she must obey. After all, her movement reminded her of her aunt's adventures. Well, if you compare it to Auntie, she has a lot of skills. But maybe somewhere on the tip of her beak, Ryan said. Rain shouted to her, let's finish this. Using a hyperextension attack, she went through her. The fight between Guy and Ben was still going on. Guy thought it was time for Ben to run out of steam. But, unfortunately, that didn't happen. And Ben thought there must be a striking difference between their powers. Why couldn't he see any difference? Ben wondered. But an angry Ben asked Juan Solo when he would pass out. Ben said he created the potion to surpass Ryan, so it gives him powers comparable to a dragon elder. The guy said it looked like he was just working out more than he actually was. The guy said he tried to change his appearance to provoke him in some other way, but suddenly Ben's body started to change. Ben asked me to give him a shot as soon as possible. But something happened, and he asked why he was fighting this guy in the first place. Ben apologized to the guy and said he wouldn't fight. He thinks that spending his life on fighting is a waste of time. The guy said he didn't want to fight either. He's the one who started it. The guy asked if he knew how many newbies couldn't sign up for training because of him. But suddenly Ben looked up, apologized, and said it was his fault. But he didn't understand why he had done what he had done. Ben said he only fought to save Elise, and he's here for revenge. Taking a syringe, he said that the problem with this potion is that it is very painful and turns your head into a pumpkin. He realized that he had almost forgiven everyone. This time, even before the side effects showed up. He could have ended it completely, looking into each other's eyes. Suddenly Ben saw something in the sky that shone like a star, and he shouted, Eliza? 32 years ago, the district was warrior territory. Suddenly Ben asked him if he knew why our people had so little mana. Vero said he didn't even need to know those details. But Ben said he'd better listen, since he was a county councilor. Vero said that even if he says he's not listening, Ben will still tell him, won't he? Ben said, and rightly so. Ben said that unlike martial energy, mana is quite subtle, so mana becomes freer to circulate and the more emotion that passes through a person. However, in our country, people are very disciplined and also pay a lot of attention to other people's opinions, so they suppress emotions. Mana cannot circulate unhindered, and it is impossible to possess a large supply of it. Vero said they don't need mana. It's better left to the witches, and they are better suited for their fighting energy, based on Vero's inner core and nature. Vero advised Ben to stop his useless magical research and offered to spar for the first time in a long time. Taking the sword, Ben said, fine, let's warm up. But suddenly Ben opened up and Vero threw a punch. Suddenly, Riona's mentor appeared. She chided Ben for not always having his back. I mean, he's such a talented guy. Ben said he just wasn't interested in fencing. But his mentor said he just hasn't become a master yet, so he doesn't know how much fun it is. His mentor told him to follow Vero's example. He is so excited about every training session. The mentor introduced them to her special student, and Alice. After all, she is their sparring opponent today. Lisa said that even if the two of them attacked her, she would scatter them in one blow. The boys didn't like those words. What a cheeky girl, they thought. Vero couldn't even stand it, so he pounced on her. But after hearing the guys call her a wench, Lisa got angry and got down to business. But things turned out badly for the guys. Vero realized that Lisa wasn't at all like most people's knowledge. Ben said that he had a dream, and he wanted to marry Eliza. Vero said she's not interested in weak guys. Can you handle that, Ben? But an overjoyed Ben said he was starting to learn from now on. Day after day they sparred with Vero, and every day Ben grew stronger and stronger. But suddenly one day Ben showed top class and defeated Vero. But suddenly Lisa saw this and asked Vero if he wouldn't compete anymore. But suddenly Vero was summoned by his father and scolded by him for sending him to practice fencing, and he couldn't even beat a foot soldier. Vero said something to the effect that he didn't seem to have any talent for swordsmanship at all. But his father didn't want to hear that. The father was very disappointed with his son, that he even called him talentless. But Vero had no choice but to apologize to his father. Vero went up to the roof and sat in the rain. But suddenly Lisa told him that if he sat there like that he would catch cold. Vero said it was all right and allowed her to go. But suddenly she put her arms around him. When he saw her, Vero was surprised. Taking him by the scruff of the neck, Lizzie told him to follow her. Watching Lizzie, Vero didn't understand how she could always smile. Vero thought she might like meeting him. But what if it wasn't Ben she liked, but him, Vero thought. Vero was sure he could love her more than anyone else in the world. The next day morning arrived at the practice field to hear rumors about Ben, that he had confessed to Elise and she had blown him off. Vero was over the moon when he heard that. He thought he had a chance and ran to Lisa. Vero was even ready to give up his father and family for such a great love. He was ready to look only at her and make her happy. But when he reached her house, he heard strange noises. But he didn't knock on the door. He looked out the window. And there he saw Lizzie kissing Ben. Last night Ben and Alice were talking. Ben asked her why she says no when she says she has feelings. Eventually, Alice said she liked guys stronger than her. So Ben decided to take up fencing. Of course, his win statistics aren't impressive yet. But sometimes he wins, Ben said. Eliza raised her hands and began to glow, saying that her entire body was filled with mana since birth. Well, if there is too much mana, it destroys the physical shell. For this reason, it is necessary to release some mana from time to time. Elise said she's doing it now, hiding from the public eye. But one day someone is bound to notice her, and she wasn't yet ready to make the man she cared about an accessory. But suddenly Ben put his arms around her. Eliza asked what he was doing. If he didn't let her go, the magic would get to his body. But Ben said that the only one in County Vero who studies Manu is him. And now, starting now, he's the only one who can solve her problem. Day after day Ben and Eliza were very happy. But one day Vero followed Elisa and saw her Manu. The next day Ben saw Elise lying on the ground, covered in blood. And he asked if she was all right. Lisa said she was fine. After all, she suddenly had more mana recently, and it's been happening ever since. Ben was very worried about Alice. He decided that he would not leave the lab for a while, not even for a second. He felt it was time to fulfill his promise to her. All Ben asked was for Lisa to wait until he got back. After all, it wouldn't take long. Ben said that he had recently discovered a substance that increased physical performance, but Ben didn't know if she'd take pity on him, or if she'd let him cure her, so he could love her for the rest of his life, until the day he died. While walking her dog on the lawn, Elisa met Vero, but suddenly smelled a strong odor of alcohol. A drunken Vero confessed his love for her. He said they were having a good time and were very happy. Well, Lisa said she had no feelings for him as a man. I mean, maybe Vero misunderstood her. And second, would Vero love her completely, forcing her to use mana and be a criminal? Elisa asked. In the end, he pretended not to know, even though he was aware of her situation. Vero said he didn't have the courage to rebel against his father then, but now he still seems to be scared. A drought came to Erdo. The sun shone so brightly that the ground cracked. The people went on strike and asked the Count to come out and call for rain. These people the Count called the masses. The Count said that it would be good if it rained, but he is not God, so he cannot make it rain. Vero asks his father, how should one behave in these situations? His father asks, does Vero think they hate him? They just need someone to get back at, someone to blame. She also said that father had someone who would soon be the object of his wrath to take his place. Vito asked if he could find out who it was. The Count turned around and said it was Elisa, the one his son was in love with. The Count thanked his son because he never expected that the day would come when his superficial son would help him. The Count said that if Vero had not sought his advice, he would never have known that there was a witch in their county. But Vero was outraged and said it was wrong. "How can one do this to whom his son has tender feelings?" Vero asked. The Count couldn't stand it and called him a fool, punching Vero in the face, and said how could someone who is supposed to rule the country give in to his feelings? The Count said he was sure that if he left Vero alone, he would do a lot of damage. Grad ordered the guards to grab young Vero and lock him in a room. But Vero could not stay in the room for long and escaped. He asked for forgiveness. Even if it was his will, he can't obey it this time. Even if he couldn't win this girl, he still doesn't have the courage to watch his lover die, Vero said. When Eliza saw him, Vero shouted to her. But he couldn't help her. When the Count's subordinates saw young Vero, they wondered if he was an ally of the witch. Even though he's the Count's son, if he and the witch are allies, he should be executed. But Vero turned and ran away. But Ben was not in time either, and he saw the dead body of his beloved hanging from a pole. To this day, Ben remembers everything and searches for Eliza. Attacking Han Sol, he asks him to get out of the way. But Han Sol manages to attack with a one-handed squeeze. But their fight doesn't end there. Guy makes one last attack on Ben. After defeating Ben, the guy thinks he's going to go deal with the rest of the zombies. But he's met again by that dog Bonadu. But suddenly Ben uses his remaining strength to lift his warriors into the air. A distraught Rain walks away from her rival and says she's not interested in losers. The Count says we can't just let Ben go. He'll be back for revenge. So he orders Ryan to go after him and finish him off. But Rain pulls out her sword and tells Count Vero that he's done. The Count sees this and says he thinks she's running with him. Rain asks him what he did to her aunt. But the Count, as always, jumps up and runs. But along the way, Rin, Raper, and Hindred sing and ask her to stop. But Rain is so angry and says there's no stopping them. The guys say they're on point, but sometimes you have to follow through. But she uses the table tom stand and jumps over the nickname. But she is also met by a female commander who says she won't let the Count get hurt. On seeing this blog, he also shouts to her to stop. On seeing the blog, Rain says that earlier he was beautiful only with his face, but now he has made his body beautiful as well. But had she ever succumbed to his slow attacks? Rain asked. Looking at his hand, Blog thought he had gotten stronger. But suddenly, she sees the Count running down the stairs and rushes after him. With sword in hand, she hopes to kill the Count. In a split second, the Count would have died, but Mr. Han Seol manages to grab her leg. And with the pullover exercise, he shakes her like she's nothing. This same guy realized that by fighting a tough guy, he had misallocated his strength. But Rain wakes up and doesn't know where she is. And the boy says she's inside the Vero fortress. And Mr. Han Seol asked him to take care of her. Rain asked the little boy if he knew where Count Vero was now. The boy replied that the Count was at Mr. Han Sol's place, dealing with the so-called shadows. The boy was determined to see her off. But it seemed to Raina that the boy was deceiving her. After all, a place like this wasn't suitable for training. When Rain went upstairs, he saw Mr. Han Sol and the Count. Mr. Han Sol used a drill called the Santa Claus Sleigh Gate. The Count ordered everyone to gather at the castle. Seeing that all the important people were already there, the Count started their meeting. The counselor said the first agenda is related to Ben's invasion and important people of the borough were killed in the battle. Because of the lack of military power, under the laws of wartime, Commodore Ryan was summoned from exile, but she refused, citing some important business. Counselor asked Counselor how he would address the vacancies created by this. The Count said he wanted to bestow titles on Hindered and Riper, the heroes of this battle. What do you think, gentlemen knights? Asked the Count. The counselor did not wait long and proceeded with the second item of the day. The townspeople, having seen Mr. Han Mole's contribution to this battle, come to the training ground and do bodybuilding. A new squad of swordsman bodybuilders has been created, and Mr. Ghoul is temporarily in charge of training. Is everyone in agreement with the current situation? The counselor asked. When the Count heard this, he burst out and said, "Of course, we agree. After all, this is great news." The Count expressed great gratitude to Mr. Han Sol for standing up with them in defense of the country. But suddenly Gaius showed the Count his hand and told him to wait. Gaius went up to the Count and smashed his chair to pieces. The Count asked him again what he did not like, but the boy said only Trini and pointed to Gulai. The Count decided to hold the meeting as soon as possible and ordered to shorten all the paragraphs and speak as soon as possible. The counselor said that the third point was about Rain. The girl had tried to kill the Count, but because of the current situation in the country and the Count's good intentions, her punishment would be mitigated, and so the order was given to withdraw her allegiance to the earldom of Vero. The Count told Rain that he knew she had ill feelings for him, so if she doesn't like this one, the Count said, he gives her the right to kill him, even asks her to kill him. But Rain says she refuses. The Count says a man as untalented as he is has no right to be chief, and the Count gives her the right to judge him. Hearing this, the boy stood up and asked the Count, does he mean to say that he is going to stop working and devote himself entirely to sport? The counselors jokingly asked the country who he would give them to. The counselors wanted to try because the Count had less military power. The guy couldn't think that Graf was so supportive of newcomers to the sport in his country. The boy was overjoyed. After all, whoever became an earl, it always helped him to improve his physical fitness. The counselors were beyond thrilled. One was thankful that his mother had not born him into Count Verdo's family. The author liked his position very much, but the Count to the counselor to move on to the next point. The counselor said that after this meeting, the Count promised Han Sol to make all the necessary sports equipment. However, the simulations that Han Sol wanted could not be created by the forces of the county alone, but he learned that the spirit king of the land of Bejamos could help with that. The only problem is that no one knows where to find Bejamos. When Rain heard this, she said that she was a friend of the spirits. She lived among the elves while she was studying with Latisu, so she learned how to communicate with spirits. The guy took her hands and said, okay, and asked to take her to Bejamos. Rahini said it was no problem, but in return she asked if the guy would agree to join her in her revenge. But that's when the timeline came up, and he said he asked to kill himself. But Ryan said it wasn't about him. It's about and for whom our gender family, said Rian. Outlawed by the Illuminati black magicians. In the Pesci, Ben talked to the spirits and said that too many things had gone wrong, and he wouldn't make those mistakes again. The spirits told him that they were very disappointed in him, and this is why it is always important to recognize the origin of your enemies. The spirits asked if it was because of Alice. When Ben heard that, he didn't like it and joined the fight. But they didn't notice that Commander Ryan was slowly following them. Coming to Bejamos, Gaius says he wants to meet him as soon as possible, but in return he receives a blow from the defenders. When the ghouls see this, they all scatter, and only Gaius stays behind to stop his strike. Gaius shouted for joy that he was really enjoying this gradual reinforcement, but suddenly the earth starts moving, and the ghoulies think it's an earthquake. But Blog orders everyone to take cover because he thinks it's the call of the Minter's muscles. The boy ordered the old lord to lift his weight, applying an attack with a weight of 10. The boy began to squat. Seeing this, Rain asked Ghoul what Mr. Hanseol was doing. Ghoul said that today is leg day for Mr. Hanseol, but Ryan didn't understand what a leg day was. But then Blog came in and explained that leg day meant that he was exercising his lower body, including his legs. Suddenly a voice said that some funny ants had gotten in. They introduced themselves as the master of the spiritual world of Gia, and his name is Bejamos. What purpose had brought them here? He asked. The guy finished. Feet went into the water and said that even for muscles, the most important thing in the long run is fluid. After all, the action of fluid intake is essential for muscle growth. Seawater contains a lot of sodium, Guy said, so it's not good for replenishing fluids. But it must be the sea, because the flavor is mild and delicate. Bejamos asked how he dared to drink the water when he himself was talking to him. How insolent and impudent they are, said Bejamos. Bejamos said there was no point in talking to them, so he told them to go and learn good manners. Bejamos said this place is a living labyrinth, and without the help of spirits, there is no way to know where the exit is. Plus, here and there inside the maze they will be welcomed with open arms by golems. Bejamos asked if they could break through the ever-changing maze swarming with golems and reach him. Rain used a chest-first attack. Bejamos said it was useless because there's a higher gravity here. Upon landing on the ground, Rain felt too much gravity, so she couldn't fly through the air. All the ghouls scattered around the wall and tried to push through, but it didn't work. Bejamos said it was the Earth Spirit Zone, the territory of gravity and minerals, And this wall cannot be breached with bare hands, said Bejimos. The guy kept trying and trying and trying to break the wall. They were surprised. The blog said how lucky they were that the wall was pretty flimsy. The blog prompted Gulai to demolish the wall based on the cracks made by Mr. Console. The Gully also broke down the wall and said it collapsed perfectly. However, they wondered how they would deal with the golems. Rain said that according to the duo's legends, the golems' eyes are their core, so if they were destroyed, the flow of energy would stop. Upon hearing Riahin's words, the ghouls rejoiced and all rushed at the golems with their bare hands, gouging out their eyes. Looking at the volcano, the boy asked Rain Bejimos if he was there. Rain said that if you believe what the spirits say, you must lift that thing to meet him. The boy offered to break it, but Ghoul told him not to hurry because there was a rope tied there. It hasn't been that long, 11 months since From Earth Guy came into the world. He's a full 17 years old. You could say that Hanseol is pretty young. Ghoul saw something strange hanging from the ceiling that looked like a block. But all this time, Ghoul had been hiding his homesickness. Looking at the design, Guy was surprised and said it was an upper body block exerciser. The upper block pull is an athletic exercise machine invented in the 1960s by American trainer Andrew Memel. Andrew Memel held onto the iron handles and pulled them towards him, and then realized that the movement was very similar to pulling a block overhead lying down. And he felt the need to create a simulator so that this movement could be performed more efficiently and safely. And now there are several types and designs of such a simulator. When he saw this machine, he immediately realized that it was a top block puller. The ghouls asked with surprised eyes, "What is it?" Guy asked Goulet to tell what back exercises they were doing at the time. The ghouls called one-handed dumbbell work, pull-ups, and barbell work. "That's right, kid." Ghouls helped each other, which is why they could pull themselves up, Guy said. But people don't usually have training partners. And for those people to see the effects of pull-ups too, you need a pull-up on the top block. The movements are similar to pull-ups, so they are quite comparable, and also you can choose the weight on this machine. So everyone loves this exercise. Among the back muscles, this exercise targets the scapular muscles as well as the oblique muscles of the back. But if concentration is impaired, mistakes can lead to training the muscles of the forearm or shoulder. The guy said since they have a simulator, "Do you want to try to see an example of it?" It was clear from Goulet's shouts that they all wanted one. Upper block pull. For the position, you need to fix the position so that the body does not rise up. Second, grasp so that the distance between your hands is a little more than shoulder width, and fix the desired body part on the bench. Third, apply force to the bark and lift with the oblique muscles of the back, not with the arms. And then the gaze movement should be directed perpendicular to the pipe. It is important to make sure that the back is not angled too far back and body resistance cannot be utilized. The guy said he thought the weight was too much for them and suggested they try it later and then let them continue. But suddenly he pulled and the door opened. The Count asked Ghoul, "Isn't it leg day for a gentleman? Isn't that a backward swing?" Ghoul said that his physical abilities were not at all like theirs. "But how will he get there when he finishes his training?" the Count asked. After completing the exercise, the old lord reduced the weight of the door and told Lord Hansol to quickly enter. When they walked through the door, they found themselves in a world unknown to them, where there were all kinds of small animals. When Ryan saw them, she said, "They're so cute," and she wanted to touch them because she thought they were smooth and soft. But she was stopped by Hansol and told to talk to a staff member or director before signing up an athlete, rather than touching everything out of a desire to cause friction. But suddenly some voice said that it could not disagree with Gaius, that nothing should be touched. He identified himself as Bejimos, the king of the spirits of the earth. The old overlord, when he saw him, said that he had a belly like the overlord's. When Bejimos heard this, he asked him how he dared to compare him with the creatures of the middle world. But suddenly the cat came in and said that the situation was developing in such a funny way that it was hard for her to keep from watching. This dog's name is Rena, and she is one of the highest spirits of the earth. And the real Bejimos is her. And all the workers here are also higher spirits of the earth. So don't treat them like animals, she said. Bejimos said that thanks to Rena's tests, they had assessed their abilities. But what brought them here? She asked. The guy asked her if she could make them simulators. Bejimos said that if she had the time and materials, she could make anything. Out of joy, the boy said they had made a deal. But the Count stopped him and said that it was wrong to make such a deal. Introducing himself as the landowner of Count Vero, he asked how they could pay her, calling her the Great Spirit King Begemos. Begemos said they don't need goods from their midworld, and they don't usually accept payment in goods, but something else. The Count said that whatever order the Spirit King of the land gave, he would gladly carry it out. Begemos said there's been some scum polluting the earth lately. It seems to be strong enough that everyone she sent with that message is missing. If you can get rid of that bastard and clear the land, Belamov will help you. Would there be a guide? The Count asked. Begemos said that so far they had sent mid-level spirits, and this time they wanted to see for themselves what the situation was like. Rena's higher spirit is coming with you, Rena said, because she's in charge of maintaining this place. Begemos got angry and said she knew Rena was sleeping all day and only came out for tasty treats, and Ryan was already on top of this horrible place, and she thought she had disturbed a hornet's hive. In the name of Oculus, they ordered the capture of Swordmaster Ryan, but Ryan sensed that the enemies were well prepared. However, in an ecosystem, everything is interconnected, so if you are not afraid of bees, you can just enjoy the honey. Ryan's strength was unrivaled. Her enemies came to her, and she defeated them with her strength. But her enemies didn't expect her to be so strong, and with a piercing blade attack, she crushed her enemies. Ryan thought that she had come here just for fun, so she decided to give her students some advice. Rena said that the spirits could read his memories of the land by eating just a piece of ore. Well, after Rena ate Ruta, she said she was still pretty young and had a short memory. Rena asked them to get him some rocks that were many years old, and the ghoulies immediately went in search of them. But suddenly, when they saw the stone, they decided to dig it out so that it would be more convenient to take it. But the guy put his hand on the rock and said that now it was more convenient to take it. Blog also found a rock and asked, "Is this the rock Rena was talking about?" But Blog decided to pick it up with a jerk, did a couple of squats, and threw it away. Rena saw that they had started studying. Rena thought they had forgotten about her assignment. After eating the ore, Rena saw something, but it was all a blur. But suddenly she saw a cave with platinum leading into it. But there was a frog inside, who believed that whiskey was the most worthy of names, and the most precious gift the gods had given to mankind was alcohol. The cork man said his master, in addition to giving Frog a seat, ordered him to join Oculus, and in return for his favor, some reptile made a joke of it. The man from Cork said. The frog said that she is not a reptile, but an amphibian, and she doesn't mind joining the Oculus, but she doesn't like the conditions. Frog ordered his subordinates to get Cork properly drunk. The whiskey made him scream like he was going to burn. Frog saw him and said he could see the willingness to negotiate on his face now. "We have plenty of booze, and now we can start the meeting," CWA said. Rena shouted out what she had discovered while in a deep trance, and called them midworld savages. The ghouls were examining themselves. One of the ghouls told the other that his oblique muscles had grown considerably lately. Another said his muscles were just getting in shape quickly, and added that he saw the opposite pattern. He was now lifting a lot of weight. The ghoul said that weight was the perfect way to build muscle. But the second ghoul decided he just couldn't miss those words. First ghoul said compared to weight is more important and impact. Their argument went on for a long time, and each defended his own. The first ghoul said that if he insisted, maybe we could fight once. The second supported him and said that he too wanted to offer him one. Observers said that if you look at the FAS, the oblique muscles are larger on the weight side. However, balance and symmetry are more perfect on the impact side than on the weight side. But suddenly Mr. Han Seol came in and asked what they were doing here. And with a threatening look, he asked if they had pumped all their abs. Weight versus impact, he asked. Better to put all your energy into practicing and then resting than thinking about it. But the ghoulies couldn't decide which was more important. But Hansol also asked them which was more important, the dumbbell or the hose, the muscles of the back or the front thighs of War asked Guy, or are chest or back muscles more important? The Count realized what he wanted to say, but usually compared not Mom and Dad asked him. Guy told Ghoul that you don't have to think of it as something difficult. You can feel the effect by lifting weights. The guy suggested zeroing out the entire workout, which they've done so far, and starting over. On that day, the comrades once again felt with all their bodies that only Han Molu could change them. Rena, riding behind them, asked them if they were going to fulfill their duties or not. While Blog remembered his battle with Rain, but Mr. Han Seol told him that if he wanted to get stronger, he needed to strengthen his auxiliary muscles. The Blog was looking for something in the woods, but apparently he was looking for a slug. So he decided to make a ribbon out of it and jumped in to catch slugs. Standing Tree Frog told the Blog that slugs make particularly tasty alcohol. But why would a person need a slug? She asked. The Blog says that the frog may not know it, but you can get stronger with the help of slugs. Frog asked Blog if he wanted to get stronger. After all, their head is a real pro at this. Frog suggested Blog go with him and meet with the department. But Ben said he already had a mentor. But things have changed, and Blog sits with the frogs and drinks. The frogs tell him that he probably doesn't drink much in his normal life. KWA said that Blog is already getting stronger. After all, drinking contributes to his gaining strength. The Blog says he can't drink anymore. And the evil KWA hears this and says he will have to pay dearly for his drinking. But after a while, Blog wakes up not knowing where and feels very thirsty because he is dry. Blog tried to get out, but something was holding him. It was so sticky and elastic. But suddenly someone behind him told him he was twitching for nothing. He said the Blog is located in Toad's Feed Warehouse, also known as Toad Poison. It's impossible to get out of here on your own. That was the commander of Jasper's men. Blog asked the commander why they did not kill themselves immediately. The commander replied that it was to create a dungeon. A dungeon is a land of darkness from which monsters endlessly appear. But monsters can't actually be created endlessly. Utilizing energy from living creatures is the main principle of dungeons. In other words, the most important thing for a dungeon is to create and maintain a core that directs energy. So these amphibious creeps are filling their warehouses with living creatures. And they said the commander would turn into energy and become part of the dungeon. The Blog asked if there was any argument here. As you can see, the commander said there was zero chance. The commander ordered Blog to stop kicking. The more he moved, the faster the energy drained out of him. Blog realized that he was so weak that such a thing happened to him. Therefore, he apologized to Mr. Han Seol. The commander asked Han Seol, "Did the Blog Lord of the Ghouls of the Alley Mines, you Han Seol, speak?" But suddenly the commander started kicking too, and told us to get out of there. Blog asked him what he was doing, because he said that if we kicked we would die faster. After a while, Guy asked where Blog had gone. The old lord said he hadn't brought the ribbon with him, so he'd gone slug hunting. The guy said that Blog could have told him too. After all, he always carries a notebook with him. But Rena came over and said it was very strange that he still hadn't come back. The guy said he'll be fine. He's not so weak that he can't defend himself. The Count told Mr. Han Seol that they were in the enemy's country. You can't be so calm. The guy picked up a rock, threw it to Graf, and said if he didn't like the calm, he could do 100 squats. Rena said their target is a Jabomon named Cork. Now he's trying to turn this place into a dungeon. One must not use force in this territory, otherwise one may thereby aid the enemy. The guy thought Toad Frog? After all, frog legs are high in protein, and that's supposedly good for muscle growth. The guy asked Rena, where is it located? Rena said he didn't know the exact place. He lives in something like a cave. Suddenly the Count stood up and said he was the master of the search. He said to trust him. Han Seol asked if he had already done all 100 squats. That same night, Toad returns with a large sack to the dungeon. He says he will soon have a large army of friends. That night, the commander said that messengers of death came to them and gave them information. But Blog wasn't there yet. The old lord told Guy that Blog hadn't even brought Coke's chest with him. Would he be able to use the spent proteins? The guy said the Blog would be fine. After all, he was blessed by nature itself, because Blog has the most dulled taste buds in the world. The fact that they are dulled means that he is not selective in what he eats. The only thing Blog can't eat is his parents. But even then, Han Seol didn't say that. But Blog was so hungry that he began to eat the messenger of death. Blog was happy to see the beneficial substances begin to spread through his body, but Blog started kicking. Seeing this, the commander told him he couldn't get out. But he proved otherwise and got out. The ghouls began to ponder if there was anything good in creating a dungeon. The old lord said yes. After all, a dungeon is an automatic system that allows you to accumulate power, and if you create it once, it expands the area from which you can absorb power, as well as the absorption speed. so that the creator can gain territory. Why don't people create dungeons? Perry asked. The Count said that people are already suffering from taxes, and if you require them to give up their life force, wouldn't they rebel? The Count said that not only could it not be created by a small number of people, but it was not easy to maintain. The Count's head spun around. The ghoul said that it smelled disgusting and very damp, so not only humans but even monsters couldn't live there. But why create a dungeon in such a place? Rena said there are two things you can get from an environment where it seems hard to get energy. First, purposely find a small area to minimize intrusion by outsiders. There may be another purpose other than dungeon creation. But in both cases, the process of creating a dungeon is very labor-intensive. While the frogs sang a song that they drink to their heart's content, for alcohol flows down their throats. The frog asked if they knew why alcohol was so good. Said that because they had alcohol with them, they could meet such a variety of friends. The frog asked if he was ready to stamp the contract. The boy was silent, so the frog decided to give him another drink. Frog said it was time to create a new alcohol and called his friends to the factory. But one of the friends lost his temper and asked for a drink, or he would blow up the whole place. To make everyone feel comfortable working, the class suggested we go shopping for the best whiskey ingredients. But suddenly the guy met some frogs and decided to help them. But the frogs didn't realize whether Kwa was a friend or not. But suddenly the guy said the break was over and suggested they move on to the next round. He told them to keep the rhythm and feel the contraction of the pectoral muscles. And while the frogs were working, the guy would tell them to relax their biceps. And he'd make them pretend that they were working out with dumbbells and their shoulder blades were extensions of their forearms. But suddenly the frogs got angry and asked why they should listen to him. But the boy said that sports equipment should not be handled carelessly, and he offered them a fresh start. But they told the frog that she was not their friend and that they were drunk. But the guy asked them, what were they even talking about? Hadn't they just become training buddies? The frogs realized he wasn't their friend, so they took the equipment and attacked the guy. The guy said you can't point sports equipment at people, but suddenly their shovel broke. They didn't realize how it happened. After all, this guy couldn't withstand their attack. When the frogs looked up, they saw a big, huge creature, and it was Hanseol, who said he hadn't accidentally misheard. The guy said that pumping your muscles to work with weights is important, of course, but doing stretching with resistance bands is just as necessary. Overstretching significantly reduces the strength of your muscles. Therefore, you can lengthen your muscles with modern stretching, and then we continue to exercise the right way. If you don't want to stay trim, you have to stretch your torso. KVA tasted the whiskey and said it was excellent. In other words, they alone were enough to create dungeons without the help of Oculus. Raising his glass, KWA decided that today was the most appropriate day for a toast. So he ordered the drunks to assemble. But suddenly the officers of the Order of the Red Hat Drunkards appeared. Kavit asked if he had gathered them here, so everything was ready to be ignited. Kwa said it was okay because co-workers should always stick together. Kwa said that it had been a long time since they'd had fun, so they decided to play a drinking game. Moving to the liquor warehouse, we are introduced to Nagero. He's the fourth cube who runs the game, and he says that the drinking has begun, and it's time to determine the players of each camp. Finding a lively response from 380 creatures depending on the character, they will split into two camps. The boy didn't understand what it was. Nejiro said that there should be 5 participants in each camp. If no one wants to play, they will have their blood alcohol concentration raised by 0.1% as a general penalty. A guy asked the gym's ancestors what the blood alcohol concentration was. The ancestors answered that alcohol does not directly harm muscles. However, since the liver, which processes proteins, breaks down alcohol first, this can interfere with muscle formation. When Yuhan Seol put his hand on Yuhan Seol, he agreed to participate. When Ghoul saw this, he tried to push too, but he was stopped by the Count. The Count said that no one should press that button because it's enemy magic that could be a trap. There are many other people here besides them. It is better not to endanger them, but to observe the situation safely with the other participants, just in case the Count accidentally pressed the button himself. The old lord thought that if he didn't participate, Han Sol-san would probably think he was just having fun, so he decided to participate as well. Rina immediately took offense to the fact that it was enemy magic that created the field and conditions. Such magic has no immediate effect, but depending on the conditions, you can get very serious penalties. Reina said that in that case, it would be most effective for the 5 strongest to participate. Reina and Rina decided to participate. Najiro said that the players are determined. Team A consists of Yuhan Sol, Old Lord, Graf, Rain, and Rina, and Team B consists of Cork, Randeep, Cavid, Pilot, Tailcock. The rules of the game are simple. The players become rabbits, but one from each camp turns out not to be a rabbit but a carrot. Participants in each camp need to defend their carrot and fight the enemy. If their carrots are taken away, they're the losers. And the blood alcohol content of the losing team will increase by 0.1%, and the game will be over. So it is more profitable to catch 1 carrot than 3 birds. But there can be ballast in this game. When KWA started playing, he saw a carrot in their camp. But suddenly he noticed an injured player and demanded support. The senior CWA said they've already sent 10 people there. Is that a carrot? But Han Seol was there. The boy screamed that he would never allow his muscles to be destroyed. But the old lord screamed to protect him because he was the carrot of their team. The count decided to take it all in stride. But he didn't understand why they weren't following him. The ghoul said that Morse code said the old lord was a carrot. So they ran to catch the carrot, thought the count. But how does the enemy know they are not running after him? The old lord is said to be running around shouting that he is Markovka. The old lord shouts, "Stop them because they look very dangerous." But suddenly, Rina gets into a fight with some enemy. Didn't they ask him if he wields an orb? The enemy said he wields a luxuriously smelling magic sword. But Cavid drank a bottle of alcohol and said that his magic creates fire armor around him depending on the strength of the alcohol. And attacking the boy, he used Young Moon's chariot attack, saying the boy would be burned alive tonight. But the guy didn't have time to use an arm swing attack on the block. And Cavid was defeated. And he was a rabbit. The hostess asked Killate if she had to do such nonsense. Killate said it was the terms of her contract with Mr. Cork, so she had to fulfill it. The hostess denied it. She just wanted to drink and have fun. Killate said she would handle it so she wouldn't have to interfere. Killate said it was all right, but he asked if Mistress liked the new rabbit toy he had brought her. The landlady said she liked it, but she was bored sitting in her room all the time. So she decided to go hunting for carrots. Rina used a series of sidekicks with a circular motion of her working leg, and his enemy felt her power. Rina told him not to get distracted when he was fighting her. But then Mr. Cork came in and said there was a carrot. Cork yelled at them not to run away as he talked to them. But Rina intervened and said she could handle them alone. But Cork used the attack of the Lecher's song, and Rina decided to plug her ears and spin on the sound wave, obeying the vibration. According to Rina, if the core can be secured properly, it will help mitigate the damage. Killate asked Mistress if she liked it or rabbit hunting. Mistress said that everyone was so weak that she thought they would soon get bored. Ghoul told Madame Rain to be careful because these guys are no joke. He pointed to Mr. Han Sol. Neighbors asked him if he was okay and what was even wrong, but Guy said he was falling asleep. But Ryan got angry and said that Guy had promised them revenge. Rayhan asked what technique he used to beat him and what made him fall down. The guy said that muscles don't grow during training, they grow during sleep, and that's why you need at least 7 to 8 hours of sleep for good muscle growth. However, according to the ancestors of the gym, alcohol hinders the growth of muscle mass. The rain left him resting. I mean, they still don't know who the carrot is. And whoever she catches, it's a 50/50th chance. The lady said she thought Killate would show her some interesting drama and was looking forward to it. But in the end, all they see is arrogance. Killate said he'd figure it out, because his magic gets faster when he drinks more. So he attacked Ryan, but he missed. The mistress got angry and told him to pull himself together. Killate said he was lost and could not drink because the more he drank, the less chance he had of hitting the target. Watching Killate, the hostess said that someone must have already guessed that he possessed illusion magic. Her magic increases the illusion zone depending on how much she drinks. And amongst the illusions, somewhere lurks the real Kilata. Even if she tells them everything, they won't be able to handle them. Because at the end of the game, this whole field will be under the power of magic. But suddenly it appeared that Rina had bitten her mistress, and Killate ran to help, but collided with Rina's one-legged stretch. Rayhan told them to learn to breathe properly first. Kilata from the team couldn't play anymore. And unfortunately, he was a rabbit. But the old lord of the team can't play anymore because the old lord was also a rabbit. They were followed by Tailcock from the B team. and he can't play either. Because Team B's tailcock was the carrot. And a qualitative penalty for everyone on the B team, blood alcohol levels rose 0.1%. The Count told the old lord that he had done a great job of averting his opponent's eyes. In the end, the carrot of the A team was Vero. Cork was angry, and he wanted another drink. After all, this forest was their territory, and all the energy that came from the battles so far would become the main energy for the dungeon. The Toad's Lair dungeon. Before he left, Blog was approached by a guy. He asked what was bothering him. Hanseol asked him, "Do you still want to pump up your muscles?" Blog replied that he wasn't quite confident and thought he was still too weak. The guy asked him why he thought that, since he looked very good and dignified. Blog said that when he was taught proper movements, the guy mostly told him about pull-ups and barbells. He could only compete on strength, but his technique is weak. The guy said that even though he hasn't been training that long, he already wants to compete with him. The guy told Blog that it wasn't that he had reached his limit. After all, something had been bothering him from the beginning, and he asked Blog to raise his hand. The guy asked, when Blog pulls up, does he experience pain or discomfort? Blog said there was no pain, but there was discomfort. The guy said the Blog still doesn't use the cog muscles, but other muscles have taken over. By lifting the shoulders, they engage the anterior serratus muscles, shoulder rotator muscles, and trapezius muscles. But when Blog raises his hand, he doesn't use them. Here's how the guy figured out his problem, and he'll teach you how to train them properly. Exercises for training the anterior serratus muscles. First, take a band and stretch your arms forward a little wider than shoulder width. Retension the arm on the beach so that you feel the tension of the band and begin to move your shoulder blades. And third, after waiting 3 to 5 seconds, slowly straighten your back by pulling your shoulders back. The guy told Blog to do 3 approaches of 15 reps every day, and then he would feel progress. But suddenly an enemy came to the Blog and said that his boss ordered him to save this bottle. If he drinks this alcohol, his body will become stiff and hard. The Blog says his exercises are very good for strengthening the anterior cingulate muscle, and his throwing is getting stronger. And secondly, it improves the overall health of the body. Using a pullback attack, Blog threw the opponent over himself. Suddenly, the commander ran out of the tent shouting that he had found the core of the dungeon, and he could quietly change everything by simply changing the master to himself. But suddenly the enemy attacks and grabs this core in the dungeon, and he says he did it very easily. The commander is confused and doesn't even know if he should get out of here now. The head of the ghouls ordered everyone to take a defensive posture. He said the formation must not be broken. After drinking the first drink, Quack used the attack of the Song of Debauchery, but the head of the ghouls said to hold on, because if they relaxed, they would definitely lose. But suddenly the guy woke up and said he could hear them just fine, because he had just finished practicing his pharyngeal muscle. Quack asked, "What's with the naked monkey?" But the guy used a one-arm bench press and hit Quack, and used a medicine ball over his head. Ghoul saw the guy and said his muscles always look great. That's because muscles with interrupted muscle fusion deflect cerebellar signals. But suddenly, the anterior deltoid muscle was out of the brain's control, and it disturbed Hanseol's condition. The guy activated the rare muscle monster mode. When Quack saw him, he said he had experienced something like this before when he was a tadpole. Quack said we should run, but the old lord stopped them and said no. In fact, they can sense it all, and if they don't stop him, everything will be ruined. He decided that there was nothing that could be done, so he arranged a large gathering of the army. The old lord said that the temporary alliance was only for this time, ordered the first and second ranks to surround Mr. Hanseol. The red-eyed army ordered to close Mr. Hanseol's eyes, but Hanseol saw memories when he was training and set his own record in the 900-pound bench press. The trainer said that at first glance, it looked like he was just doing the bench press, but in fact he was doing the bench press using only the small pectoral muscles, because any part of the body can be freely controlled if it is trained. The coach suggested Hanseol give it a try. After all, he could discover a new world for himself. But Hanseol refused and said he was training for fun. Quack shouted to his warriors to block his view, to keep him quiet and unable to move as much as possible. But suddenly there was an elephant, or said it was like an ant and an elephant wrestling. A tremendous release of unconditional power. As his partner said, he could handle one side of the leg, But the old lord said he was not ready to become a suicide bomber. But Blog threw a punch at Han Sol. Rena said he landed on time and called him an egg. The old lord said that the minimum conditions have been met, and now we need to wait for Mr. Han Seol to come to his senses. The guy remembered again how he broke his cell phone at practice and told the coach that he couldn't control the force that overwhelmed him. The coach said that whatever Khan does, the power he can control can steer him in the right direction. The coach said that uncontrolled force is like a deadly weapon and is fraught with very serious consequences. The guy thought he'd like it if he got bigger, and he would like it if he made his body stronger. Why does he look like that? The boy thought. Not a muscle was listening to him. And the boy realized he was a bad student, because all this time he wasn't treating his muscles the way he should have, and put himself in great danger. The guy was trying to tell the stubborn ones through Morse code that the first time they engaged the deltoid muscles to perform the arm extension exercise to the side, he was then supportive and helpful. A woman once asked him to swap pecs with her, and she laughed at him. The guy said he just wanted to watch him pump his armpits, and then he purposely feigned surprise, which the guy was very happy about. Ghoul said he wanted his back muscles to be as broad and strong as Mr. Han Sol's. The blog saw Mr. Han Sol's muscles quivering and reacting. God said to massage, and they could not miss this chance. Rena summoned a sand golem and ordered it to grab Han Sol and not squeeze him hard in all the right places. Rain said she would cover the places the golems wouldn't get to. The old lord asked the enemy if there was any fragrant herb that could put a person to sleep. The enemy said there was, because there was an herb named after that flavor, and quickly ran after them. But Quack used the song to put his muscles to sleep. But Blog said it was the sound of a mother whale worrying about her cub. As Muscle Monster continues to roar, doing 20, that's 15 reps each. The roar is definitely loud, but it also feels warm and caring, and when the rumbling stopped, everyone fell asleep. But suddenly it worked and the guy came to his old self. He said he hadn't felt such a pleasant male fusion in a long time. The next day, the enemy asked Quack how about fighting again. But Quack told him not to talk to him. The guy said that if the balance was off, his back would weaken and he would be hard to carry. But Quack felt that now he could not bear the pain. On Ben's side, the students did everything for the teacher. In the end, by killing the Oculus, the risk factors were reduced and everything worked out of the dungeon. But the only thing Benares gave was that Alice had been resurrected. The commander said it didn't matter. What mattered was that they had to figure it out. When she started a fight with Ben, the commander said that his revenge caused a lot of people to get hurt. Ben said he was left with nothing. But don't act like it's his fault. The commander said it was her fault for not stopping him the day he died. But Ben said they let Alice die, so it was the commander's fault. But suddenly Eliza got in the way and I stopped them. Eliza asked why they were going to fight. Because priests need to be able to dialogue. She said she should start with her uncle, since she had heard that the teacher helped him with everything. Then why is he being so rude? She asked. And, pouncing on the commander, she asked, when a commander punishes a disciple, does he usually do it with the sacred ball? The commander realized that Lisa is just a shell, and she has no personal grudges. But if she left her alone, it would be a real disaster. But then Ben started apologizing and asked her to kill him instead, but not Alice. But Ben didn't understand what she had done or why everyone wanted to kill her. Brian said it was all his fault, and the fact that the entire skyline was destroyed was his fault, too. The commander apologized to Ben and said Ben realized it wasn't Alice. After the workout was over, KWA said he would never drink again. It is better to exercise than to drink. KWA had been there for an hour before Han Seol knew he still had a long way to go. The eldest lord approached Han Sol and said that they had promised to arrange a meeting with Ali Main. The guy said then you have to make time to exercise and watch your diet. When the boy came to Bejimos, he said that he had fulfilled the promise she had made, and now it was time for her to fulfill her promise. Bejimos said they have done a lot of work, but she can't do it because she doesn't have the material. Begimus said let them find the material and she'll do everything. But the kid doesn't seem to know some things, and Begimus has very high standards. Hippo said she'd let him pass when he made a beam that wouldn't bend even if you put 100 tons on it. But she knows it is possible, and she also knows where the material to make it is. The material you need is called Hickle. These genera can only be found in newly appearing dungeons. There's a new dungeon nearby. It's not hard to find, but it can be dangerous because no one knows what's there. Count With all due respect to Bejimos, could she not give the humble feudal lord an opportunity to appreciate her labors? The guy got angry and said they needed to get there as fast as possible. The count said he wasn't that strong and could die from most attacks. Showing her work, Bigamus said that this armor was worn by the chief commanders during the war with the demons. The armor was light as a feather and invulnerable to dragon claws. But suddenly they saw a pink dumbbell, and the count asked to look at it. When he took hold of it, he felt very light. Well, here too the guy decided to try to take up dumbbells. He remembered asking his teacher why he was ending his workouts with pink dumbbells. Well, Thru asked him what he thought about bodybuilding. But the guy only said 3 words: strength, size, and good on the skin. Better yet, he says he sees bodybuilding differently. After all, bodybuilding is a workout that makes it possible for him to lift any weight without any restrictions. But suddenly all the guys looked at the kid and couldn't understand what was wrong with him. Begimus asked if he was the child Kong Dongjun was talking about. The guy asked the teacher. Begunov said he was his colleague too, and he talked about saving the whole world. Someday there will be a child who will find it difficult to lift this dumbbell. So the teacher asked Bejimos to support him. Begimus asked what was the point of looking for a man who could lift her heavy weight. The teacher replied that only someone who can lift light weight as well as heavy weight can change this rotten world. And the teacher said he knew a kid who could do it. The teacher said as soon as she sees his student, let her pretend she doesn't know anything. Bejimos asked Dongjun if he was going to return to his homeworld, but he said no, because he has somewhere else to go. And now he wants to go to space. With great difficulty the boy could not lift that dumbbell. Bejimos yelled at him to beat his teacher. The boy asked the hippo if she knew where the teacher had gone, but she said that the teacher had left her a pink dumbbell and disappeared. But she has a feeling that the teacher is practicing somewhere. The boy asked if there were any other items that his teacher used. After all, the teacher told the guy that the more dangers he encountered, the faster his body improved. But suddenly the boy decided he needed a little practice and then move on. But the count felt that they were stuck here. The next day they came to their territory. But the elder lord did not like something and asked what was there. Now, she said, a lot of things happened while they were gone. When Cockatrice disappeared and Han Seol left, another power struggle began. For a while, he was able to maintain control. But when the orcs came, everything changed. But the orcs could not defeat them until the orc chieftain of the Red Palm tribe appeared. When the old lord was born, he was considered a special child. He had the magic of a poet and became a leader in the future. Well, one day he was attacked by a boar, and his life was saved by an orc of the Red Palm tribe. They were the only ones with magical powers. After that, the Red Palm orc greeted in a different way every time. And with that he instilled fear in the old lord. But suddenly the ghoulies signaled that an enemy invasion was coming. The old lord said that today they must rid themselves of their sad past. The orcs continued to advance. But the orc chieftain ordered his subordinates to leave only the slaves and the Red Palm tribe alive. But suddenly, the old lord used his weighted power to attack the orcs. The orcs were very surprised by this. Old Lord said that the enemies are at a loss. If they fight like crazy, they will definitely win. But suddenly the orc said he had found the leader of the ghouls, and the battle would end when they captured the leader. But suddenly he attacked Blog. But Blog didn't wait long and used a one-handed dumbbell press attack. Orc realized that the chapter was very strong. But Blog asked him what he was talking about. Orc said that he knew that the half-humans in human form had united the ghouls. After hitting Orc, God said that he is not the leader of the Ghoul. He is only Han Sol's apprentice to Master Ghoul, and now he will be replaced by the city, Blog said. The Orc heard the name, looked at the old lord and said, "It's been a long time, friend Ghoul." Orc asked if the old lord remembered him. Attacking him, he used his greeting as before. While the remote was doing the workout, he suggested that his guys do another 100 pull-ups and then go downstairs. But Graf said that's too much. He asked why only Gyurid doesn't train and get privileges? And why is only Gyurid getting special attention? The guy said that Gyurid is training. And Earl is well aware that the intensity of the training is a stretch. For example, his warm-up is a full workout for someone else. And his workout, where he is practicing, would be a very challenging workout for someone else. Guy thinks Gyurid realizes it himself, but his body isn't the same as it was when they first met. Now his body is unusually strong. Now his body is like the body of a monster, Mr. Han Seol said. The old lord said it's not the weakling from the past. And he's Han Sol's right-hand man and the best wizard in ghoul. Striking the ghoul on the back with his sword, he heard a sound calling for peace in the minor, for the stubborn man needed an effective way to fight. Ghoul said that roosters are the strongest monsters here. Isn't it inefficient to only use them for food? By taming them, they could fight together and thus increase their fighting power. This is how the cockrider was born. When I saw this blog, I thought it was nonsense. But the ghoulies used the cock press attack and moved into action. The old lord ordered the goons to push the enemies along with the riders. After all, it is the old lord's new tactic to devour meat. But suddenly, he used an infernal strike attack when the ghoulies were already cheering. The old lord saw this and used gravity magic. After using the Tower of Babel attack, the old lord asked Ghoul not to tell Han Sol about this skill. Okra asked the old lord if he thought defeating the Red Palm tribe was the end or something. He just doesn't want to say anything because he doesn't want to fight them anymore. And he asked if he knew the city of Oklusa. The old lord said he had heard the name several times. The orc said she once came to their tribe and gave them strength. But then they told him to fly 20% of his life energy every month. He wanted to refuse, but he couldn't because they were holding the whole tribe hostage. The orc did as they told him and then watched them, preparing to take his revenge. And then he recognized their abilities, and the peculiarity of their power was a water bomb, said Orc. But suddenly someone shot Orcus. Blog noticed him and shouted about it from the mountain. That guy said he asked me not to use that attack. The guy said he'd drop anyone who told him where Han Seol was. But I guess he saw a strong spirit in the ghouls. The girl said that there are some people among the Oakless who should be especially careful with. But Graf couldn't hold on and started to fall. But the girl used the flexibility of the points and grabbed the count. After defeating all the ghouls, Organa asked him to tell Han Sol not to come back here. Big Imus held out some things to the boy. The boy cried out. Big Imus said that even though they were short, she could not send him away empty-handed. The Count said he was grateful to her. But there are wonderful things like legendary armor, swords, shields. The Count asked, why did they take those pieces of scrap metal? The guy asked the Count if he knew what a soccer ball was. The guy said that they say that if you want to play soccer well, it is important to always keep the ball with you. This is due to better understanding its shape, weight, texture, and all this knowledge and experience is gradually accumulated. After all, the Count said he wanted to play better. So let's try now, so we can be stronger tomorrow, said the boy. And the warlord's battle drew nearer and nearer. The enemy kept up with her, but with great strength she outnumbered them. But suddenly, the mercenaries shouted to retreat. After all, they would try to buy them some time. Ben praised the commander. He said that his vitality was surging. Ben asked the teacher if she was happy that her students were so happy. The Count told Han Sol to look ahead because there were some guys running. They were the mercenaries of the titles, and asked Han Sol for help. The Count told them to tell them what had happened. The mercenary Talal, leader of Tootle's mercenaries, was out of commission. They have many comrades who have lost loved ones to the zombie invasion. So they are wandering around looking for someone to help them get revenge. But they stumbled upon the mastermind behind the whole mess. They said the man who helped him was none other than General Leon. The Count said he thought there had been a misunderstanding. General Leon would never betray his country. Graf's guy asked if the guy remembered a man named Ben who changed his body to fight. This guy's working with the general. So this man who brought Han Sol here is helping commit crimes. But suddenly the blog reached Han Sol. He said he was from the village and there was big trouble there. This guy is holding an old lord hostage. The guy tells the old lord to tell him information and he'll get better. The old lord told him it was all useless, and no matter how hard he tried, no one would tell him what he wanted. Ghoulie said such pain was nothing compared to what they had to endure during training. At this time, they are experiencing indescribable pain that they have never experienced before. Now they are in extreme pain due to their inability to exercise. There is a loss of muscle mass.